Good evening. Good evening to this, the February 27th meeting of the Livermore City Council. I now call this meeting to order. Let the roll show that all of the members of the council are present and accounted for. Ask you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now we have comments on supplemental materials. The city clerk.
Yes, Mayor Mershon and council. We have a supplemental materials memo, and usually before the meeting, if there's some materials that have been submitted to the council after the publication of the packet, we make them available to you through this memo. It's also available to the public, copies in the lobby, and it's also on our website. But the one item I'd like to make note of is item 402, is adoption of the ordinance amending the zoning district map. This was the ordinance that was introduced at the last meeting, and we did have an amendment to it. And so this ordinance in the supplemental materials memo reflects the amendment that the council made.
Okay, and there's a copy out in the lobby.
Yes,
okay.
2 copies out there for public review.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Moving on to proclamations and presentations, we've got the Poet Laureate annual update. Kevin Gunn, our Poet Laureate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Mershon. In March, I read Sunday with Jesse, a poem to commemorate the sculpture near the Bankhead Theater. Also in March, TV Channel 30 interview with Tom Morrison, Life of Life program, talked about our Poet Laureate community program. Did a poetry workshop at MSC Smith School in April also. Read a poem on the downbeat for the bandstand celebration. Was asked to be the guest speaker at the Tri-Valley Writers Club and taught a poetry lesson there that I was told was well received. I dedicated a poem to dedicate the new Concannon Station in April as well. And we had a Ravenswood series. Dennis Maloney and Susan Cohen were featuring. Read a poem called Strength in Numbers at City of Livermore Civic Dinner. Attended the California Writers Club Tri-Valley Writers Awards event to support Tri-Valley teen poets. I judged the Alameda County Fair Poetry Contest last summer. My wife and I were asked to feature at the Petaluma Poetry Walk this summer, and we represented the City of Livermore there at that event. My wife and I also taught a poetry workshop at the International Day of the Girl at Oracle in Pleasanton. About 50 girls there, ages 11 to 13. You actually got a picture ended up in Forbes magazine, which kind of surprised me. We also taught an adult education class at Vineyard Poetry, and I served as a judge for the Modesto Poetry Festival in the category Across Generations. So that's my 2016 report. We just launched a contest called Test Tube Poetry, Poems About Science, which I'm hoping to get a lot of entries on, to judge that in the next couple of weeks, get that determined in March. And that's kind of where we are.
How would somebody submit a poem for the Test Tube?
I've been advertising it to a lot of different venues, and there are a lot of flyers available. There's a poetry website that you can send poems to. I don't have off the top of my head right now, but we've been doing a lot of publicizing of this. We also publicized it in the newsletter out at the lab, hoping to get people, scientists out there maybe interested in involving in this contest.
Okay, or maybe we could post it onto the website, the city website, so check with Rebecca on that.
That's a good idea. Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay, well, thank you. And it's been a year since we dedicated Sunday with Jesse.
I think so.
That's incredible. That's great. Well, great. Thank you very much, and appreciate all the time into the city. We greatly appreciate it.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Gunn. On to our proclamation declaring March 2017 the Livermore Retail, Hospitality, and Tourism Month. I've got a proclamation here. I believe Rochelle Snedecor from Livermore Downtown Inc. is here. So the proclamation of the City of Livermore proclaiming Livermore Retail, Hospitality, and Tourism Month, March 2017. And it starts out, whereas the City of the Livermore Valley is a tourism destination attracting millions of visitors to the wineries, downtown, and the outlets. And whereas Livermore's retail, hospitality, and tourism businesses substantially contribute to economic vitality and help define the unique character and high quality of life in Livermore. And whereas the retail, hospitality, and tourism businesses in Livermore provide employment opportunities, services, and amenities for our more than 88,000 residents. And whereas the Livermore Valley Wine Growers Association, Livermore Downtown Inc., and the City of Livermore, among others, have partnered to promote the many retail, hospitality, and tourism programs, activities, and events in Livermore, including the Livermore Valley Hospitality Rally. And whereas the Livermore Retail, Hospitality, and Tourism Month is a time to celebrate and to raise awareness of our retail, hospitality, and tourism businesses and their contributions to our communities and our economy, now, therefore, the City Council proclaims March 2017 as Retail, Hospitality, and Tourism Month in Livermore and encourages residents to learn more about the city's retail, hospitality, and tourism businesses and how we can support them. So, Ms.
Thank you so much. Chris Chandler could not be here, so this will be in my office. Oh, no, I'll share it with her. We'll keep it in Livermore downtown for 15 days and then put it in the Wine Growers.
Great. Comments, please.
Thank you. We were so thrilled. There's so much happening in March. It was perfect timing to be able to designate this as kind of the launch for a whole nother next level approach that we have going on for our Livermore Valley hospitality and tourism. The first launch of that is on March 14th. As Mayor mentioned, it's the Livermore Valley Hospitality Rally. This is our chance to get, if you touch a tourist and a visitor in our community through your work, you need to be a part of this training program. So what we've done is we've designed basically our launch of what we want to be known for with Livermore hospitality. So the rally will be on March 14th at the Purple Orchid Resort and Spa from 9 to 11:30. Lots of surprises along the way. But what we've done is we've produced a series of videos that are made to be a new tool in the kit of any business in Livermore working with tourists so that they have something to help supplement how they're training their staff. It really addresses making sure the staff understands what's available in Livermore so that if you're waiting on a table or you're helping someone at a business and they have a family and they're saying, what can we do? We're here for a couple of days. We want everybody to be a concierge. It doesn't matter what your position is in our community. So this will be helpful. Mayor has a starring role in one of our videos, so you'll get to see his thespian abilities in this process. But we made them short, quick, very impactful, and a lot of fun. So if you know anybody that should be there with us learning through that, please get the word out for us as well. You can find more information at livermoredowntown.com. And why do tourists really come here? Well, we got a lot going on in March. March 25th and 26th, Barrels, Bottles, and Brews is being produced by the Livermore Valley Wine Growers Association. Taking the barrel tasting weekend up quite a bit, a bigger notch, so we're going to see a lot more people in the valley. More information on that at lvwine.org. And then on March 26th, if we can get our trails to dry out a little bit, we have the Livermore Half Marathon and Kaiser Permanente 5K. More information on that on runlive.com. That one is pulling in runners from all over the country and the world. It has been just it builds every year. People are so impressed. I look at it as a run-through postcard for just how beautiful our valley is, especially in March when it's going to be even greener than ever, but hopefully a little drier. But again, thank you. We just can't say enough how much we love that and appreciate the support the city has behind tourism and visitors appreciation and the Livermore Valley community. All right, thank you.
When's the half marathon again?
March 26th.
March 26th.
So Sunday, March 26th. And again, runliveliv.com where you can. You should have a whole team. I think the council should run. It's just a party in the downtown. It really is. You know how to run.
That's a great.
Now run a marathon.
Well, I'll ask anybody who's going to go roll. I'll be rolling in it.
All right.
Fourth
Very
consecutive year. So.
Right on. Very good.
As a council, what the heck?
Excellent. All right then. Well, thank you. Moving on to the Citizens Forum. These are items that are not on the agenda. The City Council can neither deliberate nor take action on an item when it's brought up during the Citizens Forum. But we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. It's got about 10 cards here. Bruce Shore, Connie Copps, and Maria Carlomagno. Mr. Shore.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, and members of our city staff. Tonight, I'm here to express thanks to all of you on behalf of my good friend Benjamin Jafari, who for 7 years has owned and run the Casbah Mediterranean Cafe on First Street near the Vine Theater. He will be retiring and closing it this next weekend. Benjamin is unable to be here tonight, but he wishes to express his appreciation for the opportunity that Livermore has given him for his business, for the welcome he has received by so many patrons, and especially for the help he has had from our city employees. He's always felt that our city genuinely welcomed him and his business. Livermore does well in providing a business-welcoming city. As I have learned, opening and running a restaurant or any other small business brings many challenges, some of which come through the need to meet various standards of safety and health that are set by local and county governments. To ensure that important standards are met, cities have staffs that oversee compliance and issue licenses. The staff that the City of Livermore has for this purpose have always demonstrated an honest and very professional approach to their tasks. But at the same time, they take care to be helpful. They are doing their job right. Benjamin prided himself on always getting the very top marks in the health inspection. And as he planned expansion of his operation, he was particularly grateful for the wisdom of David Roche, now retired from the planning department, who seemed to know every building in Livermore and was always ready with helpful advice as decisions on structural changes were planned. The Livermore Planning Department always seemed interested not only in overseeing the regulations, but genuinely concerned to be helping people to meet the requirements. Not all our neighboring cities bring this attitude of welcome helpfulness to their residents. Benjamin expresses his appreciation to all of those at City Hall, every employee with whom he came in contact, especially to our mayor, for the support he's had here. He hopes that the City of Livermore continues to make our city welcoming to business owners, to remain business-oriented in their outlook. This Sunday, the Casbah will open for the last dining there. A buffet for $45, a fundraiser for Iranian women's movement. And I look forward to greeting you there. Thank you.
It's a great restaurant. It will be missed. Thank you, and give our regards to Benjamin. Wish him all best luck. Thank you. Connie Copps, Maria Carlomagno, Dorothy Finney-Slade. Ms. Copps.
Hi, I'm here tonight because Mayor Bobs and Stephen, I'm here tonight to request that you take a look at Springtown as a whole. Over the last 20-some-odd years, when planning Springtown, it's been very piecemealed, and due to that fact that it's been piecemealed in its attempts to have some kind of planning to it, what happens is a lot of, there's missed opportunities. And I know I'd actually ask you to pull 6.3 tonight about the flower, because that report is actually jammed with a lot of things that should be, I think, combed through just to make sure that they're supported by fact. Back in 2008, when you did your community workshops, you had, like general input from everybody. And they included the local parks, the Springtown Library, the local playing fields, the Springtown Golf Course. And, at these meetings, there was talk of a red-legged frog and all that kind of stuff. But what the talk was for was the northeast facilities in Livermore. Now, over the years, the city of Livermore has owned a lot of land. And there's a lot of land that's changed hands. There's actually land that went to something called I think, well, I don't want to say, but they actually run another homeowners association besides the Springtown Association. So around the golf course, according to the county record, there's like 3 or 4 homeowners associations, and they go under Spring Valley 1, Spring Valley 2, Spring Valley 3. And there's water there, and I know the parks, you know, the workshops going on, but 6.3 is pretty loaded with information, and I don't want that to go through as fact, because on this one here, there were mistakes made, and people really were under the impression that our HOA building was really part of the city's, you know, land, and it confused a lot of issues that we really wanted to see going, maybe input we wanted to present going forward that we couldn't because other people had preconceived notions of what we could and couldn't do on that. My advice and my request is for you to comb over the history and the land and how it's used, what is yours, what was yours, what the transactions were. Please do not go ahead and name this flower because, you know, for what's been ignored, there's too much emphasis piecemeal. You're going to push this through, and I really believe that there really needs to be better, a better input on the whole area as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copps. Maria Carlomagno, Dorothy Finney-Slade, Dean Burnett.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council members. I'm here tonight to express my last thought to you regarding the Sonoma School site rezoning and house development that you approved on February 13. I'm one of the neighbors around the perimeter on the site, and I'm quite disappointed how our concerns have not been taken seriously, with the exception of Vice Mayor Spedovsky, who I thank for listening, and especially for his complete analysis. We have now seen this happening many times.
Excuse me, Ms. Carmagno, this is actually on the agenda. 4.02 is relating to the Sonoma School site.
Okay, you want me to talk later?
I'd like to speak
No problem.
then.
I didn't know it was on
Okay,
the
that's
agenda.
fine. That's fine. So I will move you to 4.2.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Finney-Slade, are you also to speak on 4.02? Okay, great. I'll change the card then. Dean Burnett.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman, and staff. I'm here trying to speak on the lack of upkeep on Holmes Avenue between Alden Lane and Concannon. The sidewalks have been blocked for several years now, but the problem has existed for years before that. There are 11 sections of concrete block wall that are cracked, falling down, or breaking up. 6 of them are, there are 6 trees that are holding some of them up. They, as I say, they blocked off the passageway there on the sidewalk, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. There are, in 2 places, the wall has fallen down, and the soil is spilling out over the sidewalk. And another break in the wall. The debris and dirt have been removed from the sidewalk with sheets of plywood in the place of the wall. What's being done to remedy the situation? We see nothing happening. It sits there and does nothing. We're lucky that the rains didn't wash out the trees that are holding up the walls. How long will we have to wait before something's going to be done on it? It's an entrance street to the city from the south. It's a very poor picture of the city when you come in on that road and see those trees and those broken walls. I would appreciate it if you could do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. And I have been working on this for like 4 years now, and I think it just underscores how complicated this whole issue is. Mr. Spence, could you please address this for a moment? Because I've been working on this for 4 years, and the staff's been working very hard as well.
Right. Part of the challenge is that the property behind the wall, the private property that's held there, needs to be retained by the property owners in order for the new wall to be put into place. We have been reaching out to those property owners. We have sent letters and notifications, and we're hopeful that as we move forward, we'll get some opportunity to work together with them, but we need that dirt to be retained before we can put in a new wall.
And there's also been some working with insurance companies and liability and all those sort of things. It's been a while. Mr. City Attorney.
That is correct. We've been working with the various companies, one in particular, for tree damage to the wall. We have not received any response from them that's been satisfying to the city at this point, so we're actually mulling litigation to move it to the next step.
Okay, but we have been working on this consistently. It's just that it doesn't look like we have, but I assure you we have. But thank you for bringing that to our attention again.
So I've got a question on that.
No.
We don't really have the power to force the property owners to put in the retaining walls. Is that true?
We need to be cautious here. We're getting a little far afield, but just to answer that question briefly, the city has certain things that it can and can't do. That wall itself is not a retaining wall, as Councilmember Warner mentioned. It is a decorative wall. And there's certain properties where the slopes are encroaching upon that the property owners need to retain their property, so that wall, you can figure out what to do with that. So it's not something we can actually go out and force them to build their own wall.
The bottom line is that it's not under the city's sole control, and we've got to negotiate with the property owners. That's taking time.
That is correct.
Very good. Nancy Bankhead, David McGuigan, Jim Schmidt. Ms. Bankhead.
Hello, Nancy Bankhead. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I was here because Olivia Newton-John was at the Bankhead Theater, and it was a fabulous show. Well, this Friday, we've got Betty Buckley coming. She has won a Tony, and we've not sold out. And I'm just wondering if people don't realize who Betty Buckley is. She was in 8 Is Enough. She's a fantastic singer. Just going to be a fabulous show, and you're going to miss out if you don't go see it. And then on Saturday, we've got a magic show coming. If you've got kids, bring them to the magic show. Thank you.
And Ms. originated the role of Grisabella in Cats.
Yep.
Fantastic show. Thank you. David McGuigan, Jim.
Okay. You know, I'm a simple guy. I believe the officer is responsible for telling the truth. I believe the chief is responsible for his officer's actions. And I believe you are responsible for the chief's actions. I guess I'm hoping you come to realize in the middle of the night that if you have the responsibility and do nothing, well, it might as well have been you on the witness stand that committing the perjury yourself. So with that in mind, I'd like to get an answer to a few questions. And please consider that it's much more important that you answer for the people you are inviting to the wineries in the downtown who might want to know if the community they visit actively supports lying by the police in the event of, say, someone crazy runs out in front of them. The officer testified to directly witnessing the pedestrian suddenly run into the path of my vehicle when he was only 83% of the minimum safe stopping distance from my vehicle. The officer's professional opinion is the man acted safely. Do you believe it is safe to run into the path of a vehicle when it's only 83% of the minimum safe stopping distance from you? The officer tested to witness. I know you like to have all your questions at first. The officer testified to witnessing the man holding a cane. There's no mention of the cane at the scene by any other witness, and I certainly didn't see any cane. The cane was taken into evidence. Do you believe it was really a cane and that the officer was negligent for not preserving the cane at the scene, or do you believe it wasn't a cane and the officer was negligent for introducing false testimony? Why is it when someone starts out with an excuse, you know the next thing they say is going to be a lie? The officer stated, because of the initial chaos at the scene and other investigational details, the excuse, I was unable to McGuigan my full unidentified attention until 40 minutes into the call. Now the lie. Now, has anyone ever had an accident where the officer took 40 minutes to talk to you after they arrived on site? We know the paramedics and the other officers were on the scene by 15:03, so there is a full 30 minutes that is unaccounted for. Do you believe it took the officer 40 minutes to get around to talking to me, even though the chief cannot provide any account for the time? The police failed to fully disclose all the audio log evidence, retaining some 25% of the total calls. The calls withheld are for the exact time period that the officer is claiming he just begun his conversations with me. The officer was either negligent for his testimony about the cane or the preservation of the cane. Do you believe it is just a coincidence that the Livermore police were further negligent with the evidence that directly related to the time period of disagreement? The officer testified he completed taking my statement in 6 minutes. He also testified that it takes 10 to 15 minutes to take a statement. My statement shows that 2 different cans were used. I made a better example for you, by the way. One for my statement, and the second were the header and the time declaration. Do you believe he actually took my statement in only 6 minutes while still having time to change pens? You can see that about 8 pixels for this scale, 6 pixels for the other pen. So, I take my answers.
Thank you, Mr. McQuiggan. Point of order?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of Citizens Forum is for any member of the public to address the City Council on any matter within your subject matter jurisdiction. The City Council is not in a position to answer questions unless they so choose. This is not a question and answer period.
Okay, so how can I get my answers?
I would suggest you speak to the Chief of Police.
I've tried. You are responsible for the chief. The chief has failed to answer. He has refused to answer a simple question. So how does one get a simple answer? What was the officer doing for 40 minutes?
I would suggest that you speak with our city attorney. Thank you, Mr. McGuigan.
Well, I'm trying to get simple answers. Please.
Thank you.
How do you get the answers? Are you covering up for your police chief? I think you are.
Thank you. Jim Schmidt, John Stein. Mr. Schmidt.
Mine actually pertains to 6.2.
6.2? Okay, I will move that to 6.2. Mr. Stein.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. Almost 40 years ago, the city adopted a campaign ordinance which limited contributions as well as required reporting 5 days before the election of contributions. The initial contribution limit was $100. It was later increased to $250. I would like to suggest that with the rise of political action committees, that campaign contribution limit is no longer valid. The purpose of the contribution limit was to essentially limit people or organizations buying elections and requiring that the individual candidate raise money from friends, acquaintances, and supporters. With PAC, there is essentially effectively no limit on the amount of money an individual can give to a PAC, $5,000, $10,000, whatever they want. PACs are now running ads and brochures for and against candidates. So I would like to suggest that you eliminate the campaign contribution limit and default to the state limit, but keep the reporting requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thank you. With that, I'm going to close the Citizens Forum. Moving on to the consent calendar. I do have several speaker cards. Is there anyone that would like to pull any of the items for discussion right now? Okay. In that case, what we'll do is let me get a motion on 4.03 to 4.08. We do have comments for 4.01 and 4.02. Let's clear those for right now. Do I have a motion for 4.03 through 4.08? Moved by the Vice Mayor. Oh.
Seconded by?
Okay. Seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Okay, so 4.03 to 4.08 have passed. I'd like to now open up for public comment. 4.01, I have Susan Junk. Try that again. I have Susan Junk for 4.01 and Jason Bezos for 4.01. And then for 4.02, Maria Carlomagno, Dorothy Finney-Slade, and Jason Bezos. So starting with 4.01, Susan Junk and Jason Bezos.
Hi, I'm Susan Junk, and I live in Livermore. And I'm speaking tonight because I'm very disappointed in the minutes of January 23rd City Council meeting that I spoke. The what people actually say is no longer or recorded, but the essence of their why they're in front of the city council. And it would be nice to have that for posterity, what people actually say. So because of that, only real recording of what's actually said is in thanks to the local cable company. So it'd be nice if you changed it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Chunk. Jason Bezos? Mr. Bezos.
Good evening. I'd also like to speak about the January 23rd council meeting minutes, particularly on item 4.04 about the train station depot relocation. First of all, I object to the inclusion of the president of Livermore Heritage Guild and also Livermore Heritage Guild with the comments of Jeff Caskey and Alan Frank, because I do not believe they were speaking here for the Livermore Heritage Guild. And so I'd like them stricken. And as I have in the letter I'm delivering here, is there is a vote at the annual general meeting of the Livermore Heritage Guild last September 17th, and the vote was 23-17 opposing the depot relocation. Again, this is the members meeting at their annual meeting, opposing the relocation, specifically opposing the use of the $2.5 million of federal funds to move the depot. So that is the will of the Livermore Heritage Guild members, and so that's why I'm asking, because I too am a member of the Livermore Heritage Guild, but I did not come up there speaking for the Heritage Guild. So, and again, that is one thing I'd like those stricken, because they don't reflect the views of the general membership of the Livermore Heritage Guild. And secondly, I also believe too, like Susan Junk just reported, it'd be nice to have a little bit more detail rather than opposed or for, the reasoning why people are for or against. And again, I say it's missing from these draft minutes is a key thing, which is when has the city made any finding under section, chapter 4, section 20 of the historic resources component of the downtown plan that is necessary and that there are very special circumstances justifying and a public benefit of moving the depot. I can't find it in any records. Last 11 years, the city clerk is taking another 2 weeks to try to find that for me now. And I just think that's not good public policy when there's something that's in your plan which says the depot is protected from relocation unless you make these other findings, and then it's a mystery what those findings actually are. So that's another concern. I think also missing, because it was never said at the meeting other than when we had Kathy Chase, and I brought this up too, we had staff discussion, others. There was $1.1 million increase in the budget. It ballooned from a $3 million project to a $4.1 million project, and there was no discussion here. Why is this project blowing the budget by $1 million? And are there going to be more be run? Instead, we heard this litany about, oh, the building's falling apart, it's rat infested, the handles are falling off the doors. Well, the city has owned that property, or publicly owned, for the last 10 years. I mean, that sounds like the city's admitting it's a slumlord, a bad landlord, and you're spending $4 million on a building, and how are we going to ensure that you do adequate maintenance on it? So again, you know, another thing was missing. We don't have the cost overrun, and I think, again, it's telling that there was not some of the key things missing from the record from this. Again, what are the very special circumstances justifying the depot? What is the public benefit? And the $250,000 of low-income housing funds, that is still a mystery. And it seemed to me that maybe you're planning to put low-income housing right on that precise spot. It's still a mystery to me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bezos.
I'll give you a letter.
You had a question?
No, I was waiting for you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Mr. Spence would probably be the best person to again, the $250,000 in the low-income housing funds, I believe that was to reimburse the housing fund. It wasn't money out of the housing fund, because we had to put it back in.
Actually, we did have some money that was, so...
we used it to acquire the property.
Right, so the housing funds were utilized to acquire the property because we had assumed that there would be some affordable housing on the site.
We had to pay that back.
Right, and housing also contributed to the purchase of the depot, and there was some housing funds in the project for the relocation of the depot as well. Again, if we do not end up putting affordable housing on the site, then those funds, we would look to return those funds, but that was the impetus of that funding.
Okay. And as far as, for the city clerk, as far as we're producing action minutes, and these are not considered transcripts. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor. You know, we provide detailed action minutes, and if people, we work with TV30, we link our minutes with the actual video of the meeting. People want to see what was actually said, the discussions that actually occur. They go to the TV30 website via our website. There's a link, and they can click on the different items, and they can hear for themselves exactly what people have said.
So that is part of the public record. So
Yes, it
therefore, we do not need to have transcript minutes.
Exactly. Minutes
because
are not
it's part of
supposed
the
to be
video
a
record.
verbatim transcription. It's just official minutes. They capture the actions taken by the city council.
An interesting point, though, that, and I don't recall the exact wording, but if it is in there that Caskey was speaking on behalf of the Livermore Heritage Guild, and in fact he was not, perhaps it would be he spoke as a private citizen.
I think that's true about Alan Frank as well.
Yeah.
He's identified as being
Okay, right.
representing the Heritage Guild.
So perhaps
I don't think he was.
Yeah. So if that's the case, we can modify that record to have them just speaking as individual citizens.
If I could just make one point
Certainly.
For consideration, is that the minutes reflect what was actually spoken to you at the lectern. I don't think necessarily you want to be, as the city council, in the position of trying to determine whether this person did or did not represent a particular agency. That may be a concern, but that doesn't change of how they represented themselves or how they spoke to you from the lectern. Two different facts.
Okay.
All right. Point taken. Okay. So we aren't stating whether or not it is, we are reflecting how they represented themselves.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. With that, 4.02, we have Maria Carlamagno, Dorothy Finney-Slade, Jason Bezos.
Good evening again. I'm here tonight to express my last thought to you regarding the Sonoma School site, rezoning and house development you approved on February 13. I'm one of the neighbors around the perimeter of the site, and I'm quite disappointed how our concerns have not been taken seriously, except from Vice Mayor Spadovsky, who I thank for listening, and especially for his very complete analysis. We have now seen this happening many times. High-density housing being built in areas that are not appropriate. Livermore residents are asking you to stop this crazy building in the urban area. We don't like it, but you go on, because that is the way things are going. I guess we can't be any less in stature than Dublin and Pleasanton. It's very interesting how with little push from the city, William Lyon Homes was able to accommodate 13 single-story homes in their proposed development right on the spot, while attempts by the residents to get them to do this remained unsuccessful. The reality is that of the 54 homes in the new development, only 13 should be two-story homes. That would match the surrounding area perfectly. The City Council seems so concerned about finding a solution for William Lyon Homes. The City Council also appears to be concerned about no wasting time and work already done by the Planning Commission. But what about the residents? I guess we have to suck it up. This is not an emotional stand or response by one of the many residents opposing such a plan. We presented enough documentation to create a better understanding of the impact of such a decision. This change is permanent, and it will affect the residents dramatically. With all due respect, this plan is very short-sighted. I truly hope that in the next 10 years or so, the Livermore School District will not need to build a new school and ask the Livermore residents to pay for it through a parcel tax measure. Should that happen, hopefully I'll be around to come in front of the future City Council members to remind them of the poor decision they are responsible for, and not the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlamagno. Dorothy Finney-Slade and Jason Bezos. Scott Roylance. Ms. Finney-Slade.
Hi, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Dorothy Finney-Slade. I appeared before you on February 13th, also opposing the Sonoma School site rezoning, and I too have some concluding thoughts I'd like to share with you. There were two formidable entities that the neighborhood was up against, the developer William Lyon Homes and the Livermore School District. When the neighborhood came before to express their opposition, it was because every other option had been exhausted. LVJ USC had been completely unresponsive to the neighborhood's concerns for well over 2 years, first about the sale, then repeated calls about the neglect and vandalism of the property. It wasn't until the fire last month threatened the adjacent homes that LVJ USD finally provided the necessary security. The developer, in meetings with the neighbors, was unwilling to budge on the single-story and park issues. The developer consistently stated the development, and I quote, would not paper out if single stories were included in the design. They went as far as telling the Planning Commission they would pull out if the single stories were required. I want to thank Councilmember Warner and Vice Mayor Spadovsky for your resistance and pushback and discussing sending the proposal back to the Planning Commission. As a result of your pushback, a miracle happened. After a year of telling neighbors they couldn't do it, suddenly the developer was able to pull 13 single-story homes out of their back pocket in order to keep the rezoning effort moving forward. Who knows? Perhaps with a little bit more pushback from the other council members, a park might have been pulled out of that same back pocket. I call it a miracle because if it wasn't, then it was because William Lyons Homes flat out lied to the citizens in our neighborhood and the Livermore's Planning Commission. It sets a dangerous precedent when that becomes an accepted way for a developer to do business here. Building homes on our neighborhood park, the loss of our sports fields, it's a tragic and it's an unquantifiable loss. There will never be another opportunity to mitigate it. We inundated the council with tons of information regarding this development, the overcrowding issues in our schools, the lack of parks in the neighborhood, and we do thank you for the time and effort and consideration of the rezoning. Thank you to Councilmember Warner for initiating the discussion to send the plan back to the Planning Commission. A special thank you to Vice Mayor Spadovsky. You articulated very clearly and with keen insight, not only an understanding of the neighborhood's concerns regarding the rezoning, but the crucial role of the City Council in these types of discussions. Your vote was very much appreciated by this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Finney-Slade. Just a question for staff. Was the Park District offered the site for the Sonoma School site?
Yes, they were. All governmental entities were given the opportunity.
And the Park District was not interested in putting a park on that site?
No.
And as I also understand, the school district had impaneled a property advisory committee to look at all the properties and then determine which ones should be surplused, because the state actually requires them to sell surplus land.
Yes, that's right.
Otherwise, they're fined or penalized. Right. Okay, great, thank you. Jason Bezos, Scott Roylance.
Good evening. I repeat my opposition I expressed the February council meeting to the rezoning of Sonoma School. By rezoning from an E-education code to a residential use, the city is effectively privatizing this 9-acre site with few long-term neighborhood and community-wide benefits in return for elimination of 9 acres of current public space. You know, as we've heard many speakers say, that Sonoma School's playground and athletic field had long been used as a functional equivalent of a community park. And as I said the last meeting, Livermore Mayor John Shirley, longtime veterinarian here in town and still a community resident, just spoke at the last meeting, was on the council in the 1950s and 60s. And he has in his book, where he talks about the battle to that subdivision. There were 500 acres when it was subdivided back in the late 50s. 60s, and the developer, Masad Mehran, was required to lay out schools, Joe Mitchell School and Sonoma School, but he said there were 2,500 homes and no parks. The council had no power, the city had no power to put parks in the subdivision, and they had to put a park fee, $125 a home, and he says in his book that the city had to fight all the way to the state Supreme Court over that park fee. So this was an area that was deficient with parks from the beginning, and if you look back in the Herald archive back in the 1960s, you'll find that the LAPD directors were approving work at the Sonoma School Park. It was treated functional equivalent of a park. And again, a major point that I wanted to bring up when I read the statutes for the surplus land, and Government Code Section 54226 says, quote, "Nothing in this article shall be interpreted with the power of any agency to sell or lease surplus land at less than fair market value." At less than fair market value. So when you read the city, I mean, the LARPD or the city could have gone to the school district and said, "We think there should be a park in this area. We'd like a nominal fee or at least some type of amount." Didn't have to be fair market value from the way I read this. So there was a way to get a park out of this, and perhaps the neighbors pressed the city council, I mean the school board a little bit, maybe they still could carve that out. I'd like to talk to some of you about that, what the possibility is. But I mean, even a tiny tot lot or something could have been worked out perhaps with the right, again, as the people spoke to the neighbors, with the right insistence and the right governmental foresight and will, there could not have been this loss of this parkland there with no replacement. And that's the problem, not even a tot lot. And I do also think that the city does need to reform some of the historical resource policies. I think there should have been, and I'm disappointed there was not a requirement imposed as a condition of development that there be some type of monument to the school. The school had been there for about 50 years. I've been engaged with a lot of people on social media the last couple of weeks, a lot of Sonoma School alumni. The school district says it's going to do something. I don't know, a plaque is a little too little. I think something a little bit more substantial, plaque, that might be required. But I don't like the fact the city repeatedly throws away its leverage when it could be trying to get things, community benefits for residents. So I have my letter and I'll submit it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bezos. The last speaker is Scott Roylance.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor Marchand and members of the council. Scott Roylance, Vice President of Lion Homes. Grateful to be back here again for a second meeting in a row. We accepted a new condition on the project at the last council meeting. We fully accept the new condition is before you. We're excited to move forward and appreciate your support, the support that you showed last week. Happy to answer any questions if you may have, but again, appreciate your support on this project.
Any questions at this point? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Roylance. Okay, those are the speaker cards for 4.01 and 4.02. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move 4.01, and I'd like to take them separately.
Okay, 4.01 has been moved. Is there a second for 4.01?
Second. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay, you had questions on 4.0, comments?
No questions, just
Comments.
wanted a separate vote because it may be different
Okay.
than 4.1.
All right, very good. Thank you. Do we have a motion for 4.02?
I'll move to 4.02.
Moved by Councilmember Carling. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, passes with Mayor Spadovsky in opposition. Thank you. Moving, okay, public hearings, we have none. Moving on to matters for consideration. The discussion and direction regarding establishing a steering committee to provide direction on downtown planning and direction to distribute a request for proposal for consulting services to facilitate the steering committee and community outreach. Mr. Stewart.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, members of the council. So back in February 15th at your goals and priorities setting workshop, you identified that downtown as a priority, and you directed staff to focus on parking, circulation, a downtown hotel, and the continued implementation of a series of smaller projects such as Livermore Inn Plaza, the shade improvements, Shea Plaza shade improvements, that is, and also other lighting improvements downtown. And those would be the first steps in implementing additional improvements in the downtown. Excuse me. Council also identified a preferred approach to public outreach, which is to select a steering committee made up of community stakeholders to conduct analysis and develop preliminary options for downtown. Based on council direction through your goals and priority setting, the initial areas of focus would include the downtown parking, circulation, and a hotel. Under this approach, the steering committee would evaluate and prioritize foundational issues on downtown projects and provide recommendations back to the council on options for a variety of issue areas. Staff is seeking your direction on the selection of the steering committee and is recommending 2 representatives each from the City Council and the Planning Commission, in addition to representatives from other organizations that have participated in the downtown process. We are recommending no more than 13 members to keep it manageable. And then generally when forming advisory bodies, the mayor would appoint council members, and then the council would then appoint the rest of the other members. For the city commissions, which are the Planning Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, and Commission for the Arts, we're recommending the council identify the positions and/or members to serve. And then the remainder of the members would be would be recommended by the selected community groups themselves, who would forward the name and their potential representatives to the City Council for final approval. We've included a list in your staff report of those organizations. And then as your planning manager, I would serve as the staff liaison for that steering committee. Based on direction tonight, staff anticipates returning to the City Council with prospective steering committee meetings at your meeting on March 27th, and then convening the first steering committee meeting in late April or early May. If you have any feedback at this point, the steering committee's scope and timeline, we'd be happy to receive that tonight. We'll also provide more details on that when we do return in March for the council's selection of those steering committee members. And just to provide sort of a sense of scale, a scope and an ambitious schedule that's consistent with your direction would be to have the committee focus solely on those near-term projects, circulation, parking, and hotel, and then return to a council with a recommendation on those as early as July. Also, based on your direction during goals and priority setting, we're seeking your direction to prepare and distribute a request for proposal, or RFP, for a qualified consultant team to facilitate the steering committee meetings, activities, and products from that group, facilitate subsequent community workshops, and also provide design land use services. The RFP would be developed to attract a consultant team with professional facilitation, land use design, traffic, and parking experience. Staff would send out an RFP within a couple of weeks, and with a 2 or 3 week response time, could return to the council in April with a recommendation for council selection of a consultant team. And so, in summary, we're seeking your direction on the sort of framework for this process, which is the formation of a steering committee, prioritization or focus of the steering committee, what sort of product you or result you'd wish to receive from the steering committee, and then timing. And that concludes the staff presentation. We're happy to answer questions if you have them.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Questions from the council? Councilmember Carling?
Yeah, I had, so we could, I know there's a list that you folks have provided of groups. We could add groups if we want to. I'm thinking of LV Pack, for example. They're next door. They're not on the list today, but we could add them. Is that true?
So you can add or subtract groups from the list. The council can have that discussion and come up with a final list.
Okay.
We would suggest that you not add too many more.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
The other question I had is ITV is made up of many people that don't live in Livermore. Would we, I mean, is there an expectation that somebody that's going to serve on this would live in Livermore? Can we make that a requirement?
You could make that suggestion to that group, yes. You can make that a requirement.
And can we get started without the consultant or without the facilitator? I mean, I think the community is and the residents are ready to get on with this, and I'm just worried a little bit about unnecessarily prolonging this while we go through the RFP process, get responses back, get a contract in place, do whatever negotiating before that gets in place, and so on.
Sure. The both processes are actually going to happen concurrently. So there's one doesn't necessarily depend on the other. So we would be working on both of those at the same time.
Might take
Both of those being,
The formation of the steering committee
Right.
and then also engaging a consultant.
okay.
There's also some initial business that we'll do with the steering committee. So the steering
good.
committee will
Okay.
be required to abide by the Brown Act, for example.
sure.
We'll do some
Yeah.
initial training.
Okay.
And we could kick that off certainly without the consultant.
Okay. Thank you.
So it may take a couple weeks to
No,
actually impanel the committee as well.
Oh, sure. No, I'm not arguing with that.
So, yeah, so the problem-
Right. I just wanted to know what we could do before we had a
fast.
facilitator in place. And Paul, you answered my question. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
Yeah, just
Vice Mayor?
a quick comment, and I think it's good to mention any groups that we would want to add at this point, just in case people are here to speak on behalf. So maybe we're, I don't know, already addressing issues. One other group that I would like to add, and it may be problematic if we require people to live in Livermore, and this is, you'll see where I'm going here in a second. I really think that we should have at least one downtown property owner. And the property owners may not live in Livermore, but I don't really see property owner representation on the committee. You have, you have arts and you have business owners and you have, everybody else represented. But we do have people that have invested that own large sections of property that will be adjacent. I don't know if they're going to want a hotel in one spot versus another, or parking, or whatever their issues are. I would just like to recognize the people that have invested and currently own property in downtown. I don't know how we would go about finding that person. Do you have a suggestion? I don't know if we need to say that at this point, but I think Sherry Nigg would be a very good person on that committee, and I base that on the conversations that I've had with her and her husband about what's going on in downtown and some of the issues. So that would be my suggestion. I'm really trying. I see staff's point in keeping this to as few players as possible. But I think the flip side is that if we have anybody that feels like they're not going to be included in this group, and there's a valid reason for them to be in the group, I want to make sure that we err on the side of a larger group, because this committee, and I don't want to go too far into it because I'd like to hear the public comment first, but I mean, we really need to, bury multiple hatchets and find a common ground. I don't care what the overall stated goal is, but if we can't figure out a way for everybody to work together, then we're just wasting our time. And so I think that's the primary goal of this committee, and to exclude anybody that we think could be in there for a valid reason, I think just is kind of a detriment to the group. So didn't mean to go on that long, but it sort of just happened.
Councilmember Warner? Questions?
Well, comment. I think that, listening to the ads and Leet's kind of suggestions, I'm looking at the list, and I think another requirement is, again, keep it within a manageable size, but make sure that it is sufficiently diverse. I'm looking at the list, and some of these groups look like they have the same perspective, and so I'm not sure that we need that many groups with the same perspective.
Councilmember Coomber?
More a question for the city attorney. What are the differences if this were a council committee versus an advisory body? Are there differences, and what are those differences? And just as a sort of a follow-up, if all 5 council members somehow brought into this as being part of this committee, your thoughts?
All right, so let's walk through those in turn. So the difference between what would be a city council subcommittee as opposed to an advisory body. A city council subcommittee would be a committee formed by the mayor with less than a quorum of the council members. So that would be a subcommittee created of 2 council members, and that would be the rules of authority. The mayor could create that and populate that with the members. Your municipal code in Livermore talks about advisory bodies to the city council, and those are created by the city council, and you have a great deal of latitude as far as how you want to populate that, who you like to have serve on that, who you would like, what you would like them to do for you, what's your goal you want to achieve, how this particular body would help you achieve that goal, what product you expect them to return to you, whether it's just information from the community, it's actually a recommendation, or if it's just advice. You actually set that charge for the committee. If the committee is formed of people who are not on the city council and people who are outside the city council, so as is proposed in your staff report, it's a combined committee, that would be a legislative body for the purposes of the Brown Act, so it would be a Brown Act body. In that situation, the mayor would be the one to appoint the city council representatives, but the city council would appoint all the other ones as a body.
Any questions? Okay, I'm going to open it for public comment. Again, keep your comments to 3 minutes if possible. Jeff Caskey, John Stein, Marianne Brent. Mr. Caskey.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Caskey, 585 South K Street. Just as a little note, I was mentioned earlier, the LHG Board's formal vote was in support of the restoration and relocation of the depot. And again, we thank you and the depot thanks you for the victory. About the matter at hand, this is an excellent opportunity to come together and let the process reflect the voice of Livermore's residents. This really is, I think, a bit of a time for healing. In this 2-year process, the public has not been silent. They've had one public workshop. They've had many letters to the editor. They've formed their own citizen group. There have been citizen forum comments here in front of the council. And ultimately, we had an election. And in each of those cases, we got to hear the opinions of the options that were presented to them by the developer, or by the council's chosen developer. And we heard a lot about their concerns. I urge you to create a committee, and I use that word very loosely, whether it's a body or a whatever it is that you create, that does give voice to Livermore's citizens and solicits their continued involvement, ultimately facilitating public workshops so that the public is involved and can get behind and really have buy-in to the project that we're bringing them to the center of their downtown. It is very important that we create a process that the public support. It would be a shame to have gotten yet farther down the road and end up no farther along than we are today. So I the process. I'm looking forward to seeing this move ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Caskey. John Stein, Marianne Brent, Andrew Barker.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. Overall, I think that we need to involve the public early on and not just have the steering committee come up with a plan and then have workshops on the plan. I think there should be some overarching goals provided by the community. Do we want hospitality and tourism to be the primary goal? Do we want the arts, another theater or rehearsal halls to be the primary goal? Do we want community serving commercial like the original plan said? Do we want community open space? And I also think that, you can't make the area too big, but I think you've limited it too much. I think the area that should be looked at is the area between the transit center and L Street and between First Street and the railroad tracks. I think that's a manageable area, and putting in a hotel or some of the other things will constrain future plans. So I think you should look at a somewhat broader area and options. I also think it would be worthwhile to look at some successful types of development downtown. Petaluma has a town square. Santa Rosa has a railroad depot, historical square. Monterey has a conference center. And maybe get individuals from those cities to make presentations before the process goes too far. In regard to specifics, I think traffic and parking are the primary community concerns. I think we do need level of service standards downtown. They were eliminated in the previous plan. The community seems to want more greenery and less pavement. I think you've heard while the city has a commitment to open space outside the city boundaries, I think the same level of commitment needs to be looked at within the city boundaries. Finally, I think we need to realize there is a successful downtown, but it took 40 years to get here, and it's always frail. I mean, it can always be destroyed if we take out enough historical buildings or put in too little parking. And so I think we need to involve business owners. And I also think one group was sort of ignored, and that's downtown residents. I think if there's a steering committee, you should have 1 or 2 downtown residents, because they are the ones most directly affected. They're the ones who live there. I also support the idea of requiring that the actual members of the steering committee be Livermore residents. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mary Ann Brent, Andrew Barker, Tom Jefferson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and staff. This evening's agenda description relating to downtown development has alarmed me, and that's why I'm here. I agree with many of the comments from Jeff Koski and John Stein. In tonight's agenda description, staff recommends that 2 representatives from the City Council, Planning Commission, and other organizations will make up the 13-member steering commission. And this is a very top-down steering commission that would expedite the decision-making without the need for community-scaled materials and presentations. That excludes the community and the people who live there. Will such a composition in the steering commission follow the wishes of the hundreds of Livermore residents expressed here when they came to disagree with the Lennar proposal? Will the Livermore residents' wishes be disregarded? The agenda does not inspire confidence, but do you have a way to reassure more property owners and residents that their wishes will be followed? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brent. Andrew Barker, Tom Jefferson, Rochelle Snedecor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I would like to echo Mr. Warner's concerns that the proposed organizations that are listed as possibly contributing a member to this steering committee reflect one particular view of Livermore and what it should be. In particular, these organizations lean heavily towards longtime established homeowners. Let me focus on one of these groups, the so-called community group, which has sometimes been called the Ad Hoc Committee or Vibrant Livermore. If you go to the Vibrant Livermore website, you can see the leaders of this group. They are Bill Dunlop, Gene King, Jeff Kaski, Joan Seppala, Gene Schuler, Lee Younker, and, still listed on the website, Bob Carling. If these names sound familiar to you, it may be because they are also the leaders of the Livermore Valley Performing Arts Commission, which Mr. Carling just suggested should also get a seat on this committee, or of the Cultural Arts Council, or of the Livermore Commission for the Arts, or for the Historic Preservation Commission, all of which were been offered seats on this committee. These are also the leaders of the Friends of Livermore Political Action Committee. So what you're seeing is the same group of people repeated 6 or 7 times on this committee, representing the interests of people who already own houses that have tripled or quadrupled in value in the years that they've lived in Livermore, and very little representation from renters, from people who have lived here a short time, from people who work and are not retired, from people who have families, from racial minorities. I would encourage you to work hard to form a committee that really represents all of Livermore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Tom Jefferson, Rochelle Snedecor, Jan Bravant.
Good evening. I'm Tom Jefferson. I live in Livermore. I looked at the agenda packet and I was surprised when I looked at the white paper, and it was mentioned earlier tonight that there were 2 options for community outreach in this process. One of them was start with community meetings large meetings, boil the ideas down. The other one was what you've chosen, amazingly, which was start with a small group, come up with ideas, and then present these ideas to the community, which might not be the ideas that the community wants. This sort of reminds me of Groundhog Day. Perhaps you've seen the movie. Bill Murray wakes up, Groundhog Day, Groundhog Day, Groundhog Day, again and again. Now, the problem last year when you did this was you sent out an RFP before getting the community's input. And it didn't work out very well for anyone. And now it seems you're doing the same thing again. You're going to start out with a small group, get the ideas, and then get the community input. I think you're doing it backwards again. Some of my questions that I was going to ask have been answered, and maybe they will be answered. How are the participating organizations for this steering committee going to be picked? And you got into that a little bit. And I heard that the the mayor is going to select, if the number of participants from the city council remains at 2, as has been proposed, that the mayor is going to select those 2 people. It seems to me that's not a great idea because it neglects the majority of the city council. In other words, 3 people won't have a say. So I would suggest that the city council selects the 2 people or the participants from the city council as a whole. And I wonder if that might be possible. Perhaps the city attorney could have a word on that. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson. Michelle Snedecor, Jan Brevant, Don Argula.
Michelle Snedeker, my office is at 154 South J Street, the Livermore Downtown Inc. office. And Chris Chandler from the Wine Growers Association could not be here tonight, so she did give me a letter to quickly just base her statement. On behalf of the Livermore Valley Wine Growers Association members and board of directors, I would like to thank the City of Livermore and City Council for their efforts and energy to date on moving the hotel project closer to reality. The Wine Growers Association strongly supports the concept of a steering committee to facilitate community feedback and downtown development. We welcome the opportunity to be one of the participants on the committee. We support the council's decision to prioritize development of the hotel and parking and encourage the council to move quickly in constructing and completing these 2 projects. I didn't need to write another letter because I wanted to say, yeah, what she said, and just reiterate that this has been going on for years of planning. This is not happening fast. I think, the bigger project got a lot of people looking at it for the first time, but we've known for many, many years, and there's been many, many conversations and people involved in looking at the hotel, and we know without a doubt that the number one issue in downtown of concern for everyone is parking. So if we can really move forward on these now, that is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Jan Brevant, Don Argula, Chester Moore.
Good evening. My name is Jan Brevant, and I live on Tahoe Drive in Livermore. And I'm going to be pretty short. I just wanted to say that I believe that the most balanced and the best representation for the residents in Livermore would be to have Vice Mayor Spadowski and probably one of the new Bobs on the committee. With that being said, and that's all I'm going to say about that. With that being said, where are we at with the traffic study for the downtown plan? And that's it.
Go ahead and make your comments. We'll catch up on all the comments later.
That's it. Okay, so you'll talk about it later? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand and council members. Dawn Argula, CEO and President of the Livermore Valley Chamber of Commerce at 2157 First Street. And yes, we are the property owner, so you get a twofer. And tonight in the audience, we have the chairman of our board of directors, and that is Brendan Finley. and he is a vice president with Wente Vineyards. And I'm here to tell you that the Chamber supports your consideration of this recommendation to establish a downtown steering committee that will assist you in your efforts to advance the next phase of the vision for downtown Livermore. Your support and approval of this item will be welcomed progress, and we deeply appreciate the recommendation to include representation by the Chamber in the composition of this committee. If approved, we look forward to working with committee members and staff to bring forward recommendations that reflect and honor the city's rich heritage, recognizes its diverse and growing economy, and prepares for a future of innovation and inclusiveness. One of the initial areas of focus for the committee will be the hotel. The council has expressed its support for the hotel at its January 23rd meeting and again at its goal-setting workshop earlier this month. The process for a hotel has advanced to the point of selecting a developer and the production of an early concept for its design. For many months, the developer has been conducting its own outreach to solicit input from community stakeholders and, I expect, is preparing to respond to the council's earlier request to look at site options. As the staff report indicates, the process to get the steering committee up and running will take at least 2 months, and that is at least 2 months the council and its staff could be making progress on the hotel, bringing us closer to getting this project under construction. For these reasons, this chamber strongly recommends that the process for the hotel be on a separate track from the Downtown Steering Committee and allowed to continue moving through the city's process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Argula. Chester Moore, Lee Yonker, Bill Dunlop.
Hello, I'm Chester Moore, 701 Cottonwood Court. Ran for city council myself against you guys. Came in last, but that's okay. The incumbents almost lost behind me. So anyway, people are angry, and you guys are walking into a buzzsaw with this idea of an elite steering committee preceding the people's chance to give you feedback on what they prioritize in terms of the options that we all know are out there. Now, I prepared this handout here of all the options, and I'll go through it with you. It seems to me that it's quite obvious that you don't need a steering committee. You can start your workshop feedback and invite everybody who's involved, Livermore residents all, homeowners, potential buyers, renters, the downtown interest. They are all equal because the idea of a stakeholder, the way it's used by the power group in charge of our city, it's offensive because the stakeholders are really the citizens of Livermore who are paying the bills. Now, those are 50,000 people, about 20,000 homes. We each own maybe $500,000 worth of equity in our homes. That's what qualifies as a stakeholder, because we're going to ask the people of Livermore to pay the bill for this stuff. If you have a town square, it's expensive. There are other options that are out there, and I'll go through those now. I came up with this list of things that you need to ask in the workshops. It's a list of questions, and if you rank order those, if you ask the people at the workshop to attend and discuss it with the tables, everybody invited to the workshops. You all have an equal vote. Okay, here's the kind of questions that I think you should ask them, and hand this out in advance. Let the workshop work, let the discussions happen, and then have every individual rank order their answers to these questions. Okay, question category 1 is, this is questions about the Catalyst website, which is the big block, okay, the dusty parking lot. The questions I came up with to ask at the workshops are, category 1, low-cost Livermore city options. Category 1A is all landscape park is one option, or all paved parking lot is another option. Very low cost, right? But it doesn't get very much down the road in terms of progress. Category B is excavated underground parking options. One is Central Park with a railroad hotel. Can I continue for a few more minutes?
In order to be fair to everybody, what you could do is you could give your comments to the city clerk, and she can distribute those to the rest of the council.
Anyway, I think you're getting into a buzzsaw, and you need these things.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Lee Yonker, Bill Dunlop, Gene King. Okay, wait, you can both have.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Dunlop. Bill Dunlop, Gene King, Drew Felker.
Hi, Bill Dunlop, and I've been the chair of the community group over the past few years. And since 2015, the community group has been very involved in discussions on the downtown plan. We appreciate that the staff recommended that our group be part of the planning for the downtown, and we welcome the opportunity to be involved with other community members in the process of looking at options for downtown. And so that's all we have to say this time, and thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlop. Gene King, Drew Felker, Splendorio. Ms. King.
Hi. I've got more to say than Bill. Okay. The Livermore Valley Performing Arts Center, LVPAC, with its Bankhead Theater, Bothwell Arts Center, and Downtown Art Studios, are an integral part of the Livermore downtown. The Visitor Center in the lobby of the Bankhead is open to the public and staffed 360 days a year with information, art displays, and free ethnic, youth, and arts events monthly in the lobby or outdoor plaza, including free concerts on the green each week in the summer. These events typically bring more than 300 up to 800 persons to the downtown. The LVPAC Presents series includes more than 40 exceptional performances throughout the year to the Bankhead. Together with performances by the residents, companies, local community groups, touring shows, free family concerts, and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory Science on Saturday, events at the Bankhead engage, entertain, and inspire audience of all ages. The Bankhead is an important part of Livermore and the downtown. At its February meeting, all members of the LVPAC Executive Committee expressed their belief that the Downtown Development Project will have a large impact on the future success of the Bankhead Theater, and that it is appropriate that an LVPAC representative participate in the downtown group. LVPAC would welcome the opportunity to be a member of this group, working in partnership with the other members of the community. And I would like to respond just really briefly to one comment that was said that a whole lot of the people that were on the community group and in LVPAC and other ones have been involved in a lot of community things, and there might be duplications. Well, I want to say that these people have been involved for a long time with many parts of the community, and I think they represent the community very well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. King. Drew Felker, Splendorio, Jason Bezos.
Hi, my name is Drew Felker, 1821 Heidelberg Drive. I grew up here in Livermore, and I love the city, and I love how it's progressed. I'm in the under 30 crowd, and I'm a founder of the group Livermore Rising, one of the co-founders. And I would like for our group to be considered on the steering committee to represent the younger group of people. Also, let's get some more parking downtown, because that'd be sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Felker. Splendorio, and finally Jason Bezos.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, council members. My name is Splendorio. I'm here standing in for Dale Kay, the CEO of Innovation Tri-Valley. She asked me to express her gratitude for the consideration of Innovation Tri-Valley as part of the steering committee. We represent the major employers and all employers throughout the Tri-Valley. Our mission is the economic vitality of this area. And as Mr. Felker expressed, what do we care? Why do we care about downtown Livermore? Well, we care about all downtowns, but especially downtown Livermore because of the hotel. Our employers have asked us, they want to have a place here. They want to entertain here. They want to have conferences here and meetings here. and they want their people to stay, their visitors. But they also are very conscious of their most important asset, their employees. And their younger employees, like Mr. Felker, who love downtown Livermore and want to keep it vital and keep it as a place where they are proud to say that they can come here, have fun, and raise a family here. So we're most concerned about the younger people, our younger employees and our prospective employees. So we would welcome the opportunity to serve on the steering committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Splendorio. Jason Bezos.
Hi, good evening. I do believe that there should be a reset subsense with downtown, not necessarily the entire plan being thrown out, but to obviously be rethinking things. And a wide net ought to be cast to get lots of views and the wider community, not just the usual suspects, and something wider than what we had at the forum last July, where it was how should the paseos/alleys be used, and how wide should they be, and how wonderful it be. But I do say, as I said at the last council meeting, about in the 1800s, we had different visions of the time of the city. Look, the 1800s, there were giant hay warehouses there, giant, maybe, I don't know, 50 feet high. The uses change over time, and so, I mean, we ought to be thinking widely about that. And again, with historic resources, my concern, again, with the downtown-specific plan, it was deliberately chosen, that section there, and about 14, 15 structures identified as National Historic Resources, and it seemed to me utter disrespect that the council and the city bodies have shown, especially for it says you cannot have them be demolished or relocated without very special circumstances, only when necessary, and a public benefit of community-wide significance. The depot, there's nothing on the record there. The depot should be on the table right now. It was ground zero of downtown. That site had been used as a train station since 1869 when this community was founded. And I do think, and just everything that came out of being ground zero goes with that. And I think that a loss has been lost by this rush immediately to go and move this. And now the $2.5 million that were used, those were transportation funds. They could have been used for some other purpose. So that was one thing. And I know also Wagner Winery, that was a little bit of a rush, but fortunately the council reconsidered that, slowed down on that. But I do want to say again about the depot, it was protected from relocation, and I don't think the findings have been made. And also the $1 million, the city, and no one on the council brought this up, the staff didn't discuss it at all. That $1 million, this finance department tells me it could be used for any other project downtown in future years. So you've taken $1 million and spent it already on a
Point of
$35 million
order,
cost.
Mr. Bezos, you're off topic again. We're talking about the formation of the committee to look at the downtown, not how money was spent on the depot.
Okay, was that coming out of my time? I'm a
You will reserve your time.
Okay, Mr. Carley, I have to object to that, and the way you objected the last meeting. This is germane to the topic.
Mr. Bezos, could you hold your comments just for a moment? So just to review, when we actually have an item before the council for consideration for the point of order, there's a point in time in the agenda for any member for the public to address the city council on any matter within your subject matter jurisdiction at a citizens forum. And we already had that portion of the agenda. What is before you now is a particular item. Anybody who wants to speak has that opportunity to speak to the city council on that particular item for the business before them. So I would encourage you to maintain your comments to speak to the items before them with regard to this particular committee, and then we can proceed.
And the item before us is the formation of a committee to address the downtown development.
That is correct.
Yes, this is germane. The depot should have been on the table, and also as part of this committee, it should be considering how that spot is respected, the train tracks that went through there being the access with this town. So this is germane to this. And I also have to object, too, that there's been a lot of pressure brought upon citizens who tried to exercise their rights. I have to say the Livermore Heritage Guild, what happened with that is that Mr. Akaski and his board refused to allow the members...
Point of order. Please, you're off topic again. Now
this is germane to this because...
We're discussing the Heritage Guild decision.
Okay, this is germane to this because this is about the general debate in this community and who is allowed to participate in it concerning the downtown specific plan.
Mr. Bezos, This is about the formation of the committee. This is not about the decision by the Livermore Heritage Guild. It's not about the decision to move the depot. The depot's already been, that decision's been
But
made.
Mr. Caskey, when he opened his comments at the beginning, started talking about the depot. And so I think it's germane, and there was no one who cut him off at that time. And I haven't given thousands of dollars to certain PAC in this committee, so I don't know if it's a viewpoint discrimination then.
Thank you, Mr. Bezos.
I think it's viewpoint discrimination. First Amendment.
Okay, with that, I am going, it's the last of the cards that I have. I am going to close the public comment period. I know that we frequently take a break at 9. Did you want to take a little bit earlier? 9 o'clock, okay? All right.
Yeah, 9's fine.
All right. Okay, thank you for all of your comments. Appreciate those. This has been a long, arduous process and is going to continue as we continue to gather additional feedback from the community. And one of the questions that Mr. Stewart asked was, what are we looking from this committee? And personally, and I think when we saw at the meeting on the 15th, our goal-setting workshop, the council decided to split this, the downtown issue into 2 parts. The first part being the hotel and the parking. And I think that with respect to the committee, the first recommendation, the first charge would be to bring back a recommendation on the hotel location, the size, the amenities, and then with that recommendation, the parking, get the parking nailed down. The council already expressed an interest in developing information about placing additional parking next to our current parking structure. And I think that information should be shared with the committee. And once those goals are set, the parking and the hotel, because we've heard loud and clear from the community, they want the parking and the circulation solved first. Once those are set, then the committee can pursue recommendations on the other catalyst sites. This will give them the opportunity, and the way I think that this has been crafted is to allow the members of that committee to go out into their broad-based constituency to craft a vision and a sustainable plan for the downtown, something that will not only be accepted but embraced by the community, with recommendations as well for the initial funding and ongoing maintenance. As far as membership, the council and the planning commission absolutely need to be considered. As far as the council, there's been some discussion about who would be appointing or who would be appointed. It would be my recommendation as the mayor to have Councilmember Carling and Councilmember Werner as members of this committee. I think they would do an excellent job. They bring with them strong analytical skills. And we have one from the current council, and one from the previous council, and one from the new council, as it were, if you're putting labels on it. And as far as the Planning Commission, I believe they absolutely need to be considered. And there's been some talk about property ownership in the downtown, but there are some issues regarding the potential for conflicts of interest. So it would have been my initial point to have appointed the chair and the vice chair of the Planning Commission. But since there may be some Brown Act issues on a Brown Act board with the chair, it would be my recommendation to go with the immediate past chair of the Planning Commission and the vice chair of the Planning Commission. As far as the members of the committee, I certainly
Can you put names without to make sure everybody knows what you're talking about?
The immediate past chair of the Planning Commission is Gina Bonanno, and the current vice chair is Eric Bjorklund.
And Mayor, just as a point of order, are we going to, open up the discussion for
absolutely.
Planning Commission at this point
We're
and
going
move
to
forward?
Well, let me just finish. Let me add just a few more members, since we're talking about membership on the committee.
Right.
I would also suggest, because it represents, when I mentioned the broad-based constituency of the community, I think that's very important. And the Livermore Cultural Arts Council I think is very, very important because they represent a broad range of varied interests within the community. Livermore Downtown Inc., absolutely. I mean, their name says it. This is the Livermore Downtown. Innovation Tri-Valley, I think, is important because they're a wide-ranging group with a huge constituency, education, business leaders throughout the community. The Chamber, right in the middle of the downtown, economic vitality. The wine growers, and I would also suggest the Friends of Livermore be a part of this committee as well. So that's my initial shot out of the gate here, and with that, I'll open up to the rest of the council. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, you know, in terms of the direction of this group, I think I do hear the speaker's comments about being careful to come up with something that looks pre-baked before we go to the workshops. I initially thought that this stakeholder group would help us prepare for the workshops, to give us some general direction. I really do not want to see a finalized plan presented to a public workshop again, or something that appears to be finalized or well on the way. So I think we really do need to get that public input. So my goal for this group, other than already, you know, talking about burying hatchets and finding common ground and sitting around the campfire, you know, making s'mores and singing Kumbaya, that we need.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, now I would feel bad about not being on the committee if we're having s'mores, but and I think that's another topic of discussion, because I don't see any one of the five of us that wouldn't want to be on this committee, but I do understand certain aspects to that. But so I think that this group, I really don't want to see a formal recommendation for a specific project or any major decisions coming to this group, from this group to the council, without at least going through the public workshop process. So again, I think they're more of a general stakeholder group to help us prepare for the next workshop, to make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible. In terms of the appointments to the board, you know, from the Planning Commission, I do agree with the previous chair appointment of Chair Bonanno, or former chair. But I do think I would like to throw out Commissioner Caskey as well. And when I say this, it's based on several factors, but I believe it's involvement in the process, you know, for a very long time. Also, you have one of the most senior members on the Planning Commission, and I think her perspective would be valuable. In terms of the Arts Commission, one of the other two committees that we need to discuss, I would recommend either Commissioner Johal or Clements, and I base that based on their participation throughout this process. I believe, and if I've left anybody out, I think I did a pretty thorough scanning of the minutes of who spoke at the public workshops and throughout this process. I think they've been involved. Well, they've commented at least once or twice based on my recollection, so I think that they would be good. And then for the Historic Preservation Committee, using that same criteria, I think Commissioner Caskey, the other Caskey, Jeff would be good for the committee as well, based on his service and his tenure on the HPC, plus also scanning through the minutes of former committees. He, as you know, he speaks out about this issue. And I think it's important to include all of the people who've been active in this process, that we cannot look like we're excluding people that have been active. I would also, for, you know, again, trying to be cautious of the size, and maybe my view is a little jaded because I just served on the East Bay Community Choice Energy Steering Committee, and that was 39 members from all over Alameda County, and we were able to actually get something done. Took us a year and a half. You know, probably take 2 months to order a pizza from that group, but you know, we did accomplish a pretty major endeavor. So I am aware of growing the group, but I do think that Livermore Rising would be a good group to include in this committee. So with that, I think I have, you know, I don't know if we're, I guess, laying it all out here, but one of the other points that I would like to make is, I hate to say this, but I almost think a second committee may be warranted. And this is from my experience of Councilmember Warner and I being appointed to the, I forget what we called it. It was pretty quick, but the Go Find Money from Nonprofits group for downtown, which, the initial work, it's leading me down this path that I think we need and I don't know other than 2 council members, but I think that a specific finance committee would be warranted because with this group, and I could just envision the stakeholder group getting together, and one of the things that will come up constantly will be, how do we finance this idea? How do we finance that idea? I would like the committee to initially just maybe not, I hate saying this, but not focus on the finance if we had a finance subcommittee of the council looking at all the options. I think that we need some clarification as to what is owed on the site, what we have invested in the site, what are our options for financing ideas, and I think that financing would be a major distraction to the group. And if we can give direction to the group that, hey, we can, we have a different subcommittee working on the financing, and then we'll come back with finance options, I think that will free up a major potential argument, because that has come up before in public comments. Hey, that's a great idea. How are you going to fund it? If we task this group to look into financing any project, I think it's just going to delay things. I think you're going to have, you would have several months worth of meetings and discussions just on, where the money's located, what's being spent, and where could money potentially be raised if the community supports a project. So I would like to recommend forming, at the very least, two council members on a subcommittee for finance. I don't know if we would open that up to interested parties. I don't know how it would work necessarily with the other group. Our wonderful staff can figure that out, hopefully, if they're not ready by the next meeting. But I would like to, if I may, I know it's at the mayor's discretion for the finance group, but putting
let's go through the whole line here. Let's
sure. Oh, I know, but yeah. Look, just if I could just just very quickly finish. If we do agree to a finance group, I do have recommendations for who that should be.
You.
Well,
I put my money where my mouth is. So, but there's another.
Okay. Well, let's
But
take
anyway.
this through the. I'm going to get everybody's initial feedback here. I think that there was some direction that we would allow. We would suggest groups to participate, but then we would allow them to select from themselves who would be their representatives, rather than appoint.
Right. We're selecting, as I understand from the staff report, we're selecting Planning Commission, Historic Preservation, and the Arts Commission members tonight. The council makes that decision. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So those were my recommendations for the three various groups. Everybody else, you pick whoever you want.
Okay. How far down you were going to get?
No. The only one that I was specific with was the downtown property owner, because I didn't want to throw anybody's name out that I hadn't had experience with nor checked with first, and also just happens to be a Livermore resident. So.
Okay. Very good. Councilmember Carling.
Yeah, I wanted to, first of all, thank everybody that spoke to this topic. I learned some very valuable information, so I appreciate all the comments. I'm sorry that if my comments earlier to Mr. Stewart led you to believe that I thought the group was just going to go off and design what the downtown was going to be all about. I'm sorry if I gave you that impression. It's always been my thinking that this group would help lead the public workshops, and that this group would help assimilate and sort of digest the information that we got from the public. So I think the people that spoke to that point during the public comment, I agree with you wholeheartedly. We need the public's input again. And I hope and expect that if Bob, Councilmember Warner and I are leading this from the council point of view, that we will ensure that will happen as quickly as possible. I also appreciate some of the points brought up about getting some younger folks on the steering committee, and I thought Mr. Barker and Mr. Felker both spoke to those points, and I think that's absolutely necessary, because he's right, or they're right. The demographics of some of these groups are sort of what you see from me. So anyway, I think that was also a very valuable piece of information, and I appreciate that. I think that's why we have these public comments before we have the discussion. So I appreciate that. I think Councilmember Spadowski spoke to the point that Chester Moore was bringing up, and what are the options? What are the costs? I thought that he got started. It's too bad that he ran out of his time, but he left us with a very nice list, and I think that kind of discussion is going to be tremendously valuable because, there are price tags with all these things, and we need to make the public, and frankly, me too, aware of what it's going to cost. I mean, I think we could design something that we'd all agree, but man, if we can't pay for it, we're not going to get there. So what can we afford? And I think Chester and his comments got me thinking about it, and certainly Councilmember Spadowski as well. So I appreciate that. I will say that to another point that was brought up earlier, I did resign from the LVPAC board. My only guilt now is that I'm a lover of the arts. So,
but that's a good thing.
I think that's a good thing. So, but I did resign from LVPAC when I was elected. So just to make clear that I'm no longer on the board of LVPAC. Thank you.
Councilmember Cooper?
What's funny is I could pretty much have just recorded both Councilmember Spadowski's and Councilmember Carling's comments and gone along with them. I am kind of excited to hear about the makeup of the council representatives as well as those recommendations by Vice Mayor Spadowski. I want to remind the council of my favorite Einstein quote about insanity, and I think we all know it, all right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's the one thing that stuck with me when I was going through pages and pages and pages of reading the last few days, because I wanted to make sure that this was going to go the right way, that we had everybody's input. I too felt that the committee was a filter to get the ideas stratified so we can get them back to the community and present them not as which direction we're going, but what we've achieved, what we've accomplished, what have we determined in these committee meetings. And I see, again, from the sound of it, that the makeup of this committee is going to truly represent a wider section, a much broader section. And I really I was thinking the same thing when Councilmember Carling suggested it, about having Livermore Rising be involved in this in some way too, because I lament that the younger generations, even younger than myself, are not as represented as well as they could be here. And when I see housing projects and opportunities for live work spaces, I always want to include an affordability component, because we know that to keep the best and the brightest here in Livermore, the kids of Livermore here in town, we want to make sure they can afford to live here, whether they're renting or buying, that there's some element of that affordability there. And I can't add a heck of a lot more. I'm going to lose my voice before too long. I'm fighting a cold, but I would tend to be an echo here for both Vice Mayor Spadowski and Councilmember Carling, that we intend to take no action, at least I can say that for myself, until the community is heard from as a whole rather than simply the committee.
Okay, so, yes, Councilmember Warner.
So a couple of things. I listening to this and the good suggestions from the audience and up here, I think we may have to add more members here, and that it would be manageable. And I think the different demographics and the different owners and residents downtown. So we do want to get as broad an input as possible. And I'll just again say I do have a concern that the makeup of the people we have here, we want to make sure we're not over-representing one point of view too much and not having enough representation of others. So that's one key thing here. The other is, as Councilmember Carling pointed out and the others, the idea here was not for the panel to come up with an idea and then do another, this is what it's going to be, what do you think kind of thing. It's quite different. I view the workshops and what's happened in the past as to been, I'd just say, I mean, the polite term I could think about it was chaotic. And it was very difficult to manage what was going on and to really understand, you know, what the sense was of the various participants. And one of the reasons that, in my own mind, that it was difficult is that all topics were kind of being talked about simultaneously. And everybody was trying to say their thing to the other person who wasn't listening because they were looking for their chance to say their thing. So I actually view that one of the key things that the panel can do is figure out how to structure the workshops so that they're effective. I mean, so for instance, do you want to have a workshop where we talk about all things, or do you want to have a series of workshops where we talk about parking and circulation? We talk about the hotel needs, we talk about the open space needs, we talk about the housing needs, and that we go through this methodically. You know, my professional life, I'm an analyst, a strategist, and it's just very helpful to tackle one topic at a time in a very methodical way. So that's what I view the panel does. It's most about how to structure our thinking and our interaction. I think one of the other things that Vice Mayor Spadowski has brought up is how do we actually get a sense of the whole community beyond those who participate in the workshops. That's another thing that the panel could talk about. So I think that we are not in any way talking about being insane here and repeating the same thing, but I think we're trying to learn from what's happened in, excuse me, in the past, and have the panel do that learning and come back with the appropriate recommendations. So that's one thing. I think that the finance subcommittee is a really good idea. We had the finance subcommittee when we had to deal with rescuing the Bankhead Theater, and that turned out to be quite effective, I believe. So I think that's a good one. The other thing that I've heard here tonight, and I'm not sure that we might have a little divergence of opinion on, is that some of the things that we've suggested could potentially take a lot of time. On the other hand, it's been pointed out that we do have a developer with money, with the ideas, and with the willingness to give us a hotel. So one of the things we're going to have to figure out here is how to make a decision there in a timely manner and not lose that opportunity. So I'm not sure how we do it, but I'm very concerned that that we could lose that opportunity if we don't act appropriately and on a timely basis. And the other thing is that I would be pleased to serve on that subcommittee with the goal of making, of the, not the subcommittee, but the panel that we're talking about here, in order to make sure that it's as effective as possible in gathering and structuring the way to think about this problem, so that we actually end up being able to have s'mores and sing Kumbaya at the end of it. Yeah, well, no, you'll get. I'll make extra for you.
You're rubbing it in now.
Yeah.
Well, with that, from Councilmember Warner, we've talked about fast tracking and not fast tracking. I don't want to do that, but to make sure that we can move ahead. We've got someone who's proposed a hotel in the downtown. We have suggested that as to being the first part of the charge for this committee, to work out the hotel location, size, amenities, those sorts of things, and the parking and circulation. What's a reasonable amount of time from staff's perspective to herd all of the cats and bring something to bring back to for consideration?
So our initial estimates would be in July. It's a very aggressive and ambitious schedule, but if you limit the focus to the hotel, parking, and circulation, we think we can be back here before the August.
Okay, but
before August. Recognizing
Councilmember Warner's comments, right now we've got a developer that's willing to do this, but they're constrained by an exclusive negotiating agreement. So we need to extend that.
we could certainly bring back an extension to the NRA to accommodate the time frame that the council is looking at.
Okay.
We had looked at having meetings of the subcommittee as much as every 2 weeks, which would give us a little bit of time for staff to do work in between. And it depends in part on how far and what tasks the council lays out for the subcommittee, and then how quickly you want to go back to a larger public workshop.
One of the things that concerns me about the having two committees, one finance committee and one amenity committee, is we saw some huge numbers thrown out in the during some of the workshops. $60 million parking structure, $100 million green spaces. And what concerns me is that if we set into two committees, one committee may run off and say, well, we want $100 million worth of stuff, and then that goes back to the finance committee. The finance committee says, oh, you can't do that. So then, it's got to go back to the amenity committee.
Let me try something.
So I'm thinking the two of those working. No, but I mean, but to stay focused on the developing that sustainable financing plan as part of it.
Let me just try something. The panel that we're talking about is really, I believe, is there to figure out how to make sure we get the right input from the community. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily itself to design what's the result. So it's quite an effort just to make sure we get valid community input assessment, right, and how to do that. And the other, but it's another topic to think about and become thoroughly familiar with the financial aspects of this thing, and they're not in conflict.
But they're inexorably linked.
Well, yeah, but I actually like the suggestion of a focus on understanding the financials versus understanding how to get good community input. And those are two distinct things, and it doesn't have to be that they're working at cross purposes.
But they need to. There's got to be very close communication, because you can't have a disconnect between the amenities that
no, wait a minute. No, the one thing is how to get the good input.
Sure.
And then once we start getting good input, we'll be in a position to then price it and talk about its viability.
And then has to go back.
Well,
then
be
a conversation
that's
between
what we've said is
the groups.
That the panel isn't making the decisions ultimately, but it's figuring out how to make the decisions. So that's distinct, and one of the inputs would be the financials. But I kind of like that thought.
Just to expand on the idea, even if you would call it a general finance committee, I mean, I don't think you would task this committee with specifically funding any X idea. It would be more of what can we generally afford to do? Taking into consideration the parking garage, taking into consideration, the ties to the current land in terms of the affordable housing fee, getting a better understanding of those costs so that when ideas come up from the community through the workshops and they come before the council, we'll have a very solid response to what can we afford. Because right now, I don't think we really had that solid response. The response to what could we afford through the first round was, we're not going to spend a dime. We're not going to look at anything else. It's what the market will bear.
Oh no, that's not correct. No, what's
that's the general impression. I'm just saying my general impression was we put out RFPs to see what we could get without any additional financing ideas. I'm not saying specifically that the city would finance. It would be financed from other sources, and just providing the options. So
we never got to the second part. The first part was to find out what the market would support.
Right.
Then there was the community workshops, and then the next part was going to be how do you fund the delta between the amenities that the market would support and then the amenities that the community wanted. We never got to the second part of that.
And I'm not talking about the specifics, how do we fund this, it's just what funding is available, what are our funding options. Because I see that as taking a long time to come up with.
Based on Councilmember Warner's comment, one thing you could do, if you did want to have a separate committee that was focused purely on essentially the finances more generically for the sites, not for a particular amenity or a particular approach or a particular object, you might actually take a subset of your large committee. In other words, the two council members could act as your finance committee And those same two council members then are part of the broader committee. That could, one of your questions was.
The same goal. And
that
you wouldn't have
you would then
flag
do a
time.
very deep dive with your council member policy level. That's one option. There are obviously others there. And then that information could then be shared both with the council and with the broader group, and trying to figure out, okay, how do we convey these concepts to the overall community when we're out in the community workshops? Because it's about ultimately policy choices. That's one potential approach, and would allow for a very deep dive on the money part of it, with a subgroup looking at this.
I like that. I like the.
Can I? I'm sorry, but just expanding on that, the reason why is that I also think that one of the reasons for a separate group. Well, there's two. One, we are going to be asking the two council members every other week meetings with a very large group. That will take a lot of effort. That's why I thought a separate finance committee and would benefit. The other reason is a potential makeup of the second finance committee could include a council member that has extensive public financing experience through city special districts and assessment districts, and another one that has extensive knowledge in the banking industry. So I think that that there's two strengths that we have up here that I would like to put to use that aren't necessarily already involved with the committee.
Right.
So
Totally agree. Just can't imagine who you're talking about.
I have no idea.
What Vice Mayor has said, I think is the right way to go, because this is a lot of work.
It is, no
It's
question.
a tremendous amount of work, and it allows us to share the burden, and it gets more people involved with the real substance. I mean, I know a lot already about the city finances, probably more than most at this point. So I don't need to go there again. So, but I think it would be. I just love the suggestion that we have a separate finance subcommittee.
So we have the outreach subcommittee would be, well, the outreach committee with the Blue Ribbon panel or whatever we're calling this. I don't like the term elite. This is the key is to gain community input. So the two appointments to that would be you, Councilmember Warner, and Councilmember Carling, and for the finance subcommittee. And you know what? I would suggest that we make this a finance subcommittee, that this isn't just focused solely on this effort, because there's a lot of other wide-ranging issues regarding.
I had wondered why the city didn't have one already.
Yeah. So then there would be a separate finance subcommittee comprised of Councilmember Coomber and Vice Mayor Spadowski. Okay. All right.
So, Mr. Mayor, just to speak to that, if those two bodies are going to communicate to each other, the council members who are on the steering committee and the two
Can't talk to each other.
they can, but they have to talk through your council meeting here.
Okay.
So it'll be at a notice meeting here. That's where the two of you could actually communicate.
Report outs.
So it'd be here. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's great.
All right. All right. Well, so let's get down into the weeds here. I made a few recommendations as far as who would be a part of this, and then we've got a few other recommendations. We have Livermore Rising, downtown residents. Mr. City Attorney, what are the Brown Act implications of for example, a downtown resident or a downtown property owner?
If that's just the specific point of view you're looking for, is someone who has that set of facts, it's not unprecedented to have them on the board. One example is during the former RDA, they actually had someone that was in the project area that would otherwise have had a financial conflict of interest. We'd have to craft around that to be very transparent about what this person's point of view is and make sure they don't individually benefit from it. But there is some opportunity.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Sure. So if that person who's a downtown resident happens to be on the planning commission, they're still on the planning commission, we can't.
That is correct.
That's what I figured,
That is
because you'd have
correct.
two planning commissioners already. So, okay,
Correct.
well, that's unfortunate.
Okay, so let's go to what groups do you think should be on this? Now we have some of the staff recommendations as well. We've gotten several additional suggestions. What's the pleasure of the council?
Well, I would just add them all. Just because one of the things we're struggling with is making sure we get the appropriate outreach to the community, and as long as there's a named group out there that's interested, I could deal with the additional people, I think.
I agree. I think someone mentioned Livermore Rising. I know Mr. Felker did, but I would agree with that.
Yep.
Okay, so
I think LV Pack, because they're a neighbor, I think would be important.
any issues regarding the city and the bond bailing out the bank head?
I'm sorry, we were looking at another.
If LV Pack were to be a member of the committee, the fact that the city basically holds the bond, ownership of the building.
So the city is the one who actually owns the Bankhead Theater,
right,
and they have a lease with LV Pack. If we were cautious on the items that are taken up by the subcommittee, that doesn't actually affect them directly. There's some potential there. We can look at that, see if we can craft around to make that acceptable.
Yeah, I think there are actually multiple potential conflicts of interest here that we're going to have to work through. I mean, there's this interlocking directorships we've heard about, and so there's a lot going on. And I at this stage, I think let's figure out how to get the input, and then let's understand who's providing the input and what might be their self-interest and conflict of interest, and then we can deal with it. But I would open it up to start with and then filter it out later.
Okay, so who would you suggest being everybody on the list?
Yeah, everybody that's been named. I don't have any reason to exclude anybody that's been named so far.
Well, I wrote down the four that have been named outside the list were Friends of Livermore, Livermore Rising, Downtown Property Owner, and LV Pack.
And then
and a resident.
And then
the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That would be 17.
Yep. 18, I think. Yeah.
We have the original 13 plus Livermore Rising, LV Pack, Friends of Livermore, a Downtown Property Owner, and Downtown Resident. So we're adding 5 to the 13.
Just it was pointed out that the Livermore Community Group really is a subset of Friends of Livermore. There's a lot of crossover, so I think we could have one or the other. Dead silence.
Dead silence.
Okay.
Thinking.
All right.
Well, I actually, once we see
that we consider both, I don't know that either one would consider themselves a subset of the other.
Well, they have the same officers.
Yeah, I think we do have to be careful about giving one point of view half of the groups. I mean, that's what we've got here potentially, so we should think about it. But I would start and see what happens.
Well, so do we put everybody on the group, and then after we determine if there's a conflict, then we pull them off?
Well, no, not that they come off. It's just that I don't know how to do this, but it's very clear that to me that there are several people who are on multiple of these entities, and they definitely share a very overlapping point of view. You can't escape that. And the thing is, it might be difficult even for those groups to come up with different people to put on them from the different points of view and actually all show up at the same time. So it's going to be, we just got to deal with it. And I'm not quite sure how, but I would open it up to start with and see what we got. I mean, we'll be able to know what's going on. No, don't forget, what we're trying to do is figure out how to get input. We're not asking for the point of view.
Right. I think that's what I sort of liked of what Councilmember Warner said earlier, is that we want this group to help us figure out how we get community input. And I guess I agree that the more, if we include all those folks, I think they will help us, reach out to the communities that they're part of and bring them on board in terms of when we have the public workshops. I mean, you could argue that LDI and a downtown property owner are or could be very similar versus the Friends of Livermore and the community group or LV PAC. So I think there are, to Councilmember Warner's point, I think there are groups here, you could group them in different ways that would have overlap. So I say include them.
Okay. No, in that case, we've got then Mr. Felker also mentioned the Livermore Forward group.
Rising.
Yeah.
Livermore Rising?
Livermore Rising is also Livermore Forward. That's
It's the same?
No, it's two different groups.
Oh, it's two different groups.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's two different groups.
Okay.
Well, one of the criteria I think is also groups that also showed up tonight to actually speak to be on the committee. So I think that's why Livermore Rising and sorry I didn't think of you guys earlier, but I think that speaks volumes that they're still involved with the process and that they want to be included. I'd be a little reluctant to include a group that didn't show up to speak tonight in particular.
iGate?
Well, no, I mean the one that wasn't already on the list. So it's
okay.
I don't know about in particular that one because I'm looking for participation and those who've participated and are showing up tonight. So that's why they didn't really stand out for me.
But if we're going to be, if the point is to be inclusive, then we really need to be inclusive. We can't.
Well, that we could argue maybe somebody from the lab, maybe we could start coming up with more. I just think that's and that's how I went through the subcommittees, is trying to figure out those that have participated and that have been participating for quite some time.
I thought you were going for 35 members.
Oh no, 39 was enough with that committee, but and I'm not on the committee, so the more the merrier.
Okay, so we got everybody on the list, and if what you suggest, we're going to see what the conflicts are, because we've heard that we want to move quickly on this, but this is obviously going to have to come back to the council again if we start winnowing down the, after we've had a couple of meetings, who actually is there and what the overlap is, or do we just allow all the overlap?
Well, I really think that we'll figure it out between Councilmember Carnley and I guess, as to how to do this. But we're going to have to parse this into manageable chunks and get it done. And there's going to be real work. And we're not starting off with what's your vision for Nirvana here, right? We're starting off with how are we going to decide what to do and bring the community together around it. That's a different story. And it's going to take real work. And so we're not going to be, I don't think, listening to visions of what it should be as much as how do we know that we've got the right answer when we come to it. It's different. So I'm okay with having more participants talking about how to involve people in the conversation than fewer at this point, because fundamentally it's how do we involve the community. And so as many people that are in any kind of organized group that that has the energy to get into this, I would welcome to start with, and then we'll see what happens. That's where I would come from.
So do you have direction at this point? You're looking for some greater refinement?
All right, so the task before you this evening includes several different parts. So on the part of who should be a member of the group, we believe, perhaps let's start with what I think is the easy part, is I have a finance subcommittee made up of 2 council members, Vice Mayor Svidowski and Councilmember Coomber. Is that correct? Essentially, that would be the mayor appointing those 2. That is now, we would assume that's your direction. Okay, that your staff understands. The next item. That came out wrong. I'm sorry. The tone of voice, I've got to watch that. The second item is the broader group, and as I understand the direction, that is currently more or less an 18-member group with essentially those folks or groups listed in the staff report, plus Livermore Rising, LV PAC, Friends of Livermore, a downtown property owner, and a downtown resident. I don't have clarity on whether Livermore Forward made the cut or not. It seemed to not quite, but I need three of you to give me some direction on that. And essentially that would be either an 18-member or a 19-member group. And
My feeling is
the consensus there.
Livermore Forward is a 501c3. Livermore Community Group is not. So it's whether they're a real thing, and I think that that one is and has been. So that's if we're going to include them, that would be my consideration.
My concern also, and I haven't really looked it up, but also the composition of Livermore Forward. If I recall correctly, there were developers involved with that. I mean, it's truly, you have a citizens PAC, but then you also have a PAC that was comprised of developers and
Actually, no. The accountant that they had was also an accountant for the Lennar Group, but they were not part of the developers.
But they had contributors from Colliers International, if I remember correctly, and they're the broker for the site, so that would be a correct.
I don't have.
What's the difference between Livermore Forward and Livermore Rising?
Livermore Rising, I believe, is a resident group. Primarily, Livermore Forward was a PAC formed during the election.
They're also comprised of Livermore residents.
Okay, but yeah.
Were they based? Who was based in Novato?
That was Livermore.
Okay, that was the accountant. That was the accountant for the group. That was the office of the accountant in Novato.
Yeah, but you can't use a 501c3. I mean, the downtown property resident is.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, but if we're talking about what is a, I mean, Livermore Community Group calls themselves a loosely organized group, and if I understand we're trying to find as much community input as possible, and if that's the case, then we should include both sides of the issue.
Yeah, I thought we were going to include both.
Yeah,
So
I thought.
Yeah.
So we have two. We have a third.
Well, again,
okay. Livermore Forward. Okay.
So was that three?
Yeah, that was three.
All right, so we have a 19-member group at this particular point. Is there consensus on the council that that's what you just directed
Well, I
your
think
staff to
we're
do?
starting with that. And,
Okay, we're starting with that. That's the first piece of the puzzle there. The next piece was essentially the process that the council would use to choose the members of those groups. Your staff made a suggestion. The mayor, of course, has traditionally appointed the council members. There seemed to be consensus around the council members chosen for that group, as well as the finance committee, if that's true. Yes, okay.
Yes.
The next item then was whether the council wished to direct, either by position or by name, the members on your city advisory committees and commissions, since they are appointed by you collectively and work for you collectively, whether you wanted to appoint them directly or whether you wanted to ask that question of those groups. Your staff report suggested that you, as a council, direct appoint for those city groups that are directly advisory to you. Is that something the council wishes to entertain? And if so, that might be the next chunk to bite off. There were a couple of different viewpoints on who those members should be and if you should choose them.
Yeah, my feeling was I was going to allow those three groups to self-appoint. I had made a suggestion to appoint two members of the Planning Commission, and we got halfway there. I'm not sure if the consensus was for the council for those the two members of the Planning Commission. I had suggested the immediate past chair, Gina Bonanno, and the vice chair, Eric Bjorklund.
So I'm okay with that.
Okay.
one quick discussion item. I would want to check with Commissioner Bjorklund before appointing him to a committee. Happen to know him quite personally as a neighbor, and there may be work conflicts. So that's why I threw out Commissioner Caskey with, again, the experience and the longevity on the Planning Commission.
Yeah,
okay, so with that we could check with Mr. Bjorklund, since he does have extensive traffic experience as well, and that's something that's going to be a major consideration here. So I think he would be a good
so
asset
if
if he
it's
has
the pleasure
time.
of the council, let me see if I understand at least the two ideas out there, that the two members would be essentially the immediate past chair and the current vice chair And if the vice chair essentially declines to participate, essentially then the next person would be essentially Planning Commissioner Caskey. Is that, and that would
Yes,
sort of be
I think that's
an
right, yeah.
automatic? Is there consensus on that? Okay, very good. The next is your other advisory groups, whether you wished to either appoint a chair or someone by name on the rest of the items listed in the staff report. And those would be your HPC, your Arts Commission.
I would, again, if probably tap the chairs of all three. I think that Councilmember or Vice Mayor Spadowski's recommendations on the, I know both of the members he recommended, but if in order to be consistent, I might suggest going with the chairs of each of those.
I'm good with the chairs.
Okay, chairs. Okay, so we got 4 chairs.
Well, I just wanted to, I don't know if we already voted on it or not, but I'd still like to make the point that I'm basing it on people who have been involved throughout the process. I don't necessarily know who the chairs are currently of the Arts Commission and the HPC, so maybe it's if we have that list, I see people reaching for the Google to tell us, so we shall play the Jeopardy waiting music, but it may be a moot point. I don't know who the chairs are, but I was basing it on those who have participated throughout the process after Googling the list myself and going through the minutes. So that was my criteria. I'd still like to throw that out there.
Somebody's sort of
So I
scurrying
believe
about
the
there.
chair of the Historic Preservation Commission is Jeff Caskey, and the chair of the Commission for the Arts is Monia Ling.
Is who? Manuel? Okay.
They're here, aren't they?
Okay. Then I'm good with I'm good with the
believe, yeah,
chairs.
and we have them both here. That's a good sign.
We could ask them.
And that was that was consensus up here?
Yeah.
These are the nodding heads I'm looking
Yes.
at. Very good.
Okay.
Your staff had recommended that the process for choosing the member of the rest of the groups is for those groups to submit a name back to the council, and then the council to essentially consider, and if they chose, appoint those members to this group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the one group, how would you poll the property owners for that? That's why I made that suggestion. It's a little bit of a preemptive.
Yeah, they weren't on our list, so you're right. We've got a problem there. So we could do a couple of different things. Direct appoint, that's one way. Your staff likes that a bunch. That's very short and clean. Not as broad a process. But the other way we could actually, like we do for any special group, actually put out something and request people. But that's completely the pleasure of the council. You have 2 members that fall into that category, a downtown resident and a downtown property owner.
I would put out the request and see who we get. And it's the same thing that we select people for the advisory panel. Let's just see who we have.
Would that be then the
How do you do
maybe the council subcommittee that does that performs the interview? They interview the property owners and decide. Would that be are we able to do that? Because I mean, we could put out the request, but then does the request come back to the council and this is another item and it's just more delay?
Well, that's the conversation I was just having with the city managers, whether the Manny Act would apply to those particular positions. And the Manny Act is the guiding act that helps you recruit members for different advisory bodies. Let me mull that over. Right now, as far as the downtown property and resident, I think we have that in place. I think we can figure out if we can do that, bring somebody back for you based on your direction, or if you want it, as Mark said, you want to direct point someone today, that might be the easiest.
If you do want to have a process, essentially that could be part of your process when you chose as an entire group. In other words, when you actually appoint. We would bring this back in several weeks and you would actually formally appoint all the members. You could do those 2 either in subcommittee beforehand using your standard subcommittee you use for all your committees and commissions to make a recommendation to the council. That probably would be at least using a process we have.
And I just wanted to state that when I came up with the downtown property owner idea, I wanted to make sure that I was prepared with an actual downtown property owner.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I reached out to Mrs. Nigg, just based on my experience and blah, 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 everything that I said before. So it's not like she lobbied me for it or anybody else lobbied me. It was my idea. I was trying to follow through with it. That's why I proposed. So if, I think if we can direct a point, that would kind of speed that process up. And then if there's, as we vet everybody else, if there's a conflict of interest or something comes up, then maybe we have to, go ahead and modify that.
And this was for Mrs. Nate?
Yes.
Quickly? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, for downtown property owner. So did we want to do the same for resident?
Who?
I would throw out Andrew Barker's name. He shows up to council frequently, and he's been an advocate for the renters and the, so I don't know if I see a nod or not.
You want to be part of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Damn.
Easy peasy.
You got volunteered.
Wasn't so hard after all.
All right, at this point, your staff has a pretty clear idea of the composition. We would reach out to all of the groups that you've listed here and ask them to submit a name back to you as their suggested representative of their group. You would then appoint them at a subsequent council meeting. The next task for us as your staff is to get clarity on essentially the role of this committee in the first step. You, at your goal setting, came up with the concept of bifurcating or taking this in chunks, and the first chunk being hotel, and parking, circulation related to those things. The question is, what interaction, what task do you want the subcommittee to do on that piece? The one theme that I've heard is that you'd like the committee that you're in the process of forming here to give you feedback on what would be the appropriate parts of and how would you structure the community outreach. Is that the clear direction from you all that that general approach applies to both the first thing, the hotel / parking, and the larger what happens with the rest of the sites? So we just wanted to get a little
That's
clarity.
my sense to move ahead, to get the community input for the hotel and the parking and the circulation. And we'd heard suggestions of possibly having that come back to meet the timeline with our somebody who's actually waiting to just do something like that perhaps by July, if that's possible.
Well, the clarification then would be is what is the thing that you wish to have this group complete relative to the hotel and parking, if anything, by July?
So can I make a suggestion?
Please.
So what we're talking about in general is how to get input and get to a decision, right? Put up a decision package for the council that's been properly vetted. So that's the general question, is how to do that on all aspects of the downtown. But I'll just suggest that the first thing is to come back on the parking and hotel. How do we do it? So the suggestion I've got is that we're not going to have all workshops won't be all topics all the time. So the suggestion would be, let's figure out how to get the input. The first real workshop we would have, perhaps, would be the hotel and parking. And the next one is open space, commercial, residential. But let's just get these topics together. But the thought is that the hotel is really a gating item, and we've got the live one right on the hook, right? So let's figure this one out. And if we can't even figure that one out, well then, we're not so good. So that's what I would do. So it's the general thing, how to get input, how to get to a decision-ready package, but the first real item is the hotel and parking.
And I would have to, I agree with that, providing general direction for a successful public workshop, and then helping us interpret the results of said public workshop. That was another criticism of the last process from some of the groups, is that this was said in the public workshop. If you talk to one group, the public workshop went really well. If you talk to another group, it was the worst thing in the world. So, we need to figure out, also get input from this group as to the results of the public workshop, kind of, helping us with that. I almost see this as, I hate to use the term, it's overused, but baby steps. Let's have this one focused goal here with the first public workshop, general direction. How do we do it? How are we successful with the public workshop? How do we get the public input back? Help possibly interpreting that, and then the council comes up with the next step based on those results. Because really, with the first round, with the first public workshop, I think Councilmember Warner was alluding to, if we can't get our ducks lined up, if we can't get our, show some forward progress, then I don't want to delay anything and stretch this out by months and years and not have some kind of, result. So.
Okay, if that is the direction of the council, based on that, essentially the next steps that your staff would complete, assuming that you concur with this, is to return to you with the actual members for the council then to approve, assuming that at some point during the evening the council approves the concept of having us have a consultant to help us with the process. We would simultaneously be recruiting and bring that name ultimately back for you to choose and get them on board, and then begin the meetings with the group to ultimately meet these objectives that you've laid out on essentially designing essentially the information and process to get public feedback on this, with the first focus being on parking, hotel, and related circulation for those. That then would return to the council at that point, is that, if I'm getting this correct, and you would initiate essentially a workshop process at that point. Is that fundamentally the process here?
Councilor Carley?
Yeah, I think, generally, I think that's right. I just would caution all of us sitting up here is that, whereas I think that's a fine idea and a fine approach, I'm not sure, I mean, if we're going to have this group of 18 or 19 people, it's their decision too, not just the 5 or some subset of us up here. So I think we need to be open to the group saying, no, we're not going to focus on the hotel and traffic. We want to do the whole enchilada. But I think we have to realize that might be the feedback we get.
I agree with that. That's something that I brought up during our goal setting workshop when we were looking at the options 1 through 5. Start out, let's focus on 3, deal with what we have now and the opportunities now. But if a 5 appears out of that 3, and for those that don't, that weren't at the goal setting workshop, 3 was, we had different options of how to focus on downtown. 3 was hotel, parking, and
lighting.
And then 5 is the whole shebang, the whole site, how all of the items work together. So that may need to be discussed because the hotel could dictate what else goes in. What else goes in could dictate the hotel. But I think the initial focus on the hotel, parking, and lighting is good. It's just making sure we keep that open mind, where if the group has an aha moment, we hit the lottery and something appears, then we can't say you were tasked with those 3 things. Let's just focus on those 3.
Well, yeah, and lighting isn't it, because I mean that's a small item. We've already said we're going to that's another item on the agenda tonight. But let's not.
No, I know that, but he was looking for what the other one was. It was lighting.
I agree. We have to be open to what the picture is, but the focus, as we've said, is let's see if we can land this hotel.
And this is actually a committee being created by the council, so the council is really driving this initiative. And what we heard loud and clear is that we wanted the parking, the community wanted the parking solved yesterday.
Well, sure, but the residents have also thought that the previous council was driving the project too, and I don't think we want to fall into that same.
Well, true, but
oh, hang on on the parking. Now, don't forget, on the garage, putting one next to the existing garage is not in this. Is not the part of the problem. The other part of the parking problem is what happens in the 8 acres, right? So let's not. So we've already said that's a high priority to get it figured out, because that allows us to do all the rest of the stuff. We've already said something like the lighting makes sense. We've already said that the structure, makes sense to pursue, and that and going to Livermore and Plaza. Let's not get all this tangled up. What we really have to do is decide, really, which side does the hotel go on? That's really the important part, because that's what the hotelier said needs to be decided so that we can move forward. So we got to focus this, because if we have everything in there, we're looking at a long time, and we can miss the window. So, but I also absolutely agree. We convene this group and we find out what the issues are. I don't, there would have to be, in my mind, we'll find out. But let's get going.
Any other comments? Okay. Any questions more for the
No,
council?
at this point, your staff's understanding is that the initial charge of the committee is to have a focus area. If at some point the committee wishes to change that focus area, that item would be a recommendation back to the council, and the council as a whole would provide additional direction to the committee on how to move forward. Since it's a fairly gating process of whether you have a couple of month process or a many month process, that recommendation would come back to you, and the council would ultimately give guidance at that point.
One last comment. I'm sorry.
Sure, no, it's
something
fine.
just
I got
thought of this now. Yeah. In regards to the consultant for the facilitator, I would recommend that we focus on somebody who is not just I wanted to make sure we're clear, maybe staff was already going in this direction, but somebody who is not just a meeting facilitator, but somebody who specializes in community building and building consensus. I mean, we bring them in for the interview, we release the cats into the room, and whoever can herd them the best, that's who we choose, kind of thing. So we really do need a specialized consultant, not just a run-of-the-mill, I know how to do the dot exercise and put up whiteboards and big sticky notes kind of thing.
If I understand the question, it would have to do with a consultant team that would have urban design, downtown experience, and the ability to have sub-consultants work with them on traffic circulation, other technical items. In other words, someone that could actually be a resource to the committee and then ultimately to the workshops, as well as having facilitating experience.
I think the facilitating experience, specifically with dealing with the community consensus aspect, is the top out of those, because the other resources, we can use a little bit of staff, maybe consultants, back and forth. But I think the part facilitator, part psychiatrist. I mean, I could possibly use one at this point. Something like that.
All right, we will return to you, because one of the issues that this would bring up is based on the output of the committee that you're in the process of forming. That will ultimately drive likely a that would involve the public workshops and other items. If the council still wishes to have a contractual relationship with your hotelier during this process, that would require an extension to the ENRA. We would bring that question back essentially when we have more information for you to consider, and then you would be able to decide whether you wish to remain in contract with your current hotelier.
Okay. One thing I would caution all the members of the committee, and amazingly enough, I'm not on either of them. Yes, so I didn't get on that one. So I'd caution the members of the committee, because one of the things that's very difficult, and I think everybody at the dais has picked up on this, is how do you get meaningful community input? And I'm struck by the folks who say, well, this is going to be just like Groundhog Day. You're going to do the same thing, and if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always gotten. Well, part of the problem is it's very difficult to gauge community input. I have sat at this dais and listened to scores of people that were in favor of 400 housing units on this site. 400 housing units on this site. And it came out of the workshops, and they were all in favor of it. And we found out later on that many of these same people came back to the council, and now they say they don't want any housing on that site. The same people. We had community workshops about the downtown, and the community workshops were overwhelmingly in favor of BART in the downtown. Scores of people in the audience spoke in favor of BART in the downtown. And the workshops were overwhelming in support of BART in the downtown. And Chester talks about walking into a buzzsaw. we found out that 80% of the community did not want BART in the downtown. And how did we miss that? We had workshops, we had public hearings, we had all this community input, and we were absolutely, completely wrong when it came to gauging community input. So it's a very difficult thing, and I would just caution that what you get at the workshops and what you hear at the workshops may not be actually what the community wants. So this is going to be a heavy lift, and it's going to be, that's one of the reasons I think it's a great idea that we've got this broad-based group on this committee, and we have to make sure that they understand that they have to bring in as much community input and as broad-based community input as possible, so that we don't walk into another buzzsaw and find out after the fact that this wasn't what the community wanted.
And Mayor, I think if I may add to that, I think part of the difficulty, at least the last 2 years that I've been up here and being involved with local government for many years, what do you do when people change their mind? And how do you know when people change their mind? And I think that's all part of the process and one of the very difficult things. So, yeah, I think we're reacting to people changing their minds and the project constantly changing and adapting. And I think what we have here tonight in this group is a direct response to that. So I'm very optimistic. I think we're going to get great things out of this group.
Except with BART in the downtown, the community did not change their mind. The community was set that they did not want BART in the downtown, but we didn't get that part of the community to come up and speak to the council. And so the council went in one direction. We found out very clearly that the community was going in the other direction. So I'm just saying we need to be very careful about how we gauge that community input and how we ensure that we've got all the input.
Be prepared to pivot at any time, because that's our job. We're pivoters.
Well, pivoters, but also you've got to get the right sense. And the community, we didn't get that right sense several times.
It's good that we have as broad as
a broad-based
a broad base here, and which means it can either go famously or become the Hunger Games. So we just need to keep monitoring that.
Right. Okay. We have a request for a quick break. Let's make it about 10 minutes and get back here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Let's call the meeting back to order. We're back here from break. Once again, this is the February 27th meeting of the Livermore City Council, Part 2. We're moving on to item 6.02. We just got through the downtown item. And now 6.02, we have... this is going to be on the acquisition of 4 sculptures to be installed in the downtown. It's very cool. We're talking about the Cultural Arts District and public arts. So we have Rebecca Cox and Eric Uranga.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I want to draw your attention to the updated resolution and exhibit that's in the packet you have before you. It goes with this item 6.2. In January of 2016, Council approved the issuance of a request for proposal for the acquisition and installation of up to 4 sculptures in the downtown, as well as the appropriation of $120,000 of public art funds. The RFP called for contemporary designs that might be kinetic to take advantage of the breeze that often blows down First Street. Staff received 161 proposals from artists across the nation. 21 of those artists were from California, with 6 being from the Greater Bay Area: Martinez, San Pablo, Oakland, and Palo Alto. A committee of the Commission for the Arts, with Commissioner Kathy Streeter as chair and Commissioners Angela Johal and Cher Woolard, reviewed all 161 proposals and narrowed them down to the top 10. Those 10 proposals were then passed on to a community review panel that included a representative from Livermore Downtown Inc. and 3 members selected from applications received from the community. The panel was comprised of Julia Taveras, an art major at Las Positas College, who represented the youth in schools; Robin Maudlin, a member of Livermore Art Association, who represented the local arts groups; Sabrina Onimus, who represented the community at large; and Kara Johnson, who was appointed by Livermore Downtown Inc. to represent the downtown businesses. The community review panel provided valuable input into the sculptures and their proposed locations. Based upon that input, the commission adjusted its original locations and has recommended the sculptures and locations that you have before you tonight. Both the panel and the commission considered installing artwork in the grass area of Flagpole Plaza. However, the commission would like to prioritize that location in a future round of installations when a more prominent iconic design might be proposed that will blend with the historic flagpole and the fountain that anchor that plaza. So we'll begin with our first sculpture, which is Sunflower by Bay Area artist Patricia Vader. When installed, it will stand 17 feet tall with the flower petal section being 6 feet wide. It's made of stainless steel with aluminum discs in the petals, which will spin in both clockwise and counterclockwise directions with a slight breeze. The cost is $25,000. Sunflower is proposed to be installed on First Street at the intersection of South K Street in the landscaped area in front of First Street Ale House and Double Barrel Wine Bar. It will be oriented facing K Street and will be a welcome sight to motorists, outdoor diners, and pedestrians. To address a comment received about installing this sculpture at an alternative location, staff created this slide for your consideration to show how it might look and fit in this setting. So these two slides show the drawing photoshopped into the locations, the location in front of the First Street Ale House and Double Barrel Wine Bar. And this is a brief video of Sunflower in action. Sunflower won the 2014 People's Choice Award in Puyallup, Washington, and has also been displayed in North Glen, Colorado, and Palm Beach, Florida. And the next sculpture is called Ta-Da 2 by artist Chris Wrench. It's 11 feet high and 4 feet wide, and it's made of mild steel and coated with a two-part industrial epoxy paint that is very hard. The cost is $25,000. It's proposed to be installed on the grassy knoll at Lizzie Fountain. And this is a short video of it moving. The city sculpture will have the bottom form stationary and the top form will spin, and it will use more bearings than what is in this depicted in this video, and so the top form will move by the wind rather than having to have people push it to get it to turn. And our third sculpture is Tropic Birds by artist Steve Ryman. This piece is 14 feet high and 4 feet wide. The mast is made of weathered steel round bar, and the kinetic top piece includes 4 birds that are stainless steel on the top and bronze on the bottom. The cost of this sculpture is $16,800. Tropic Birds is proposed to be installed at the intersection of First Street and McLeod in the landscaped area in front of Chantilly Lace Salon. This sculpture location is in view of outdoor diners in the surrounding area. And when there's no breeze, the top kinetic portion sits horizontal. And with a slight breeze, it will gently rotate up to a vertical position as this video depicts, and then it returns back to horizontal as the breeze subsides.
And by the way, those are frigate birds.
Thank you. And our fourth sculpture is Peace by artist Lori Acott. It's 7 feet tall and made entirely of bronze with a cost of $25,000 and is in the form of a woman releasing origami cranes into the air. It does not have any movable parts. This photo shows an existing 12-foot tall version. The artist will create a 7-foot tall sculpture for the city, which will be installed upon a 3-foot high concrete cylinder for a total height of 10 feet. The city sculpture will be bronze patina with no painted portions. And it will be installed in, is proposed to be installed in front of the cinemas on First Street in the landscape area near the ticket window. And staff met with surrounding business owners as well as with Rachel Snedecor of Livermore Downtown Inc., and all have responded positively to the sculptures. Each of these sculptures will be installed with lighting elements to highlight the art at night and to deter vandalism. Landscaping will also be included that will discourage climbing on the sculptures. Staff is requesting a supplemental appropriation tonight in the amount of $31,400 of public art funds to cover the cost of lighting the sculptures, project fees, and incidentals, as well as a supplemental appropriation of $6,200 in city general funds to cover annual maintenance fees. These sculptures will be included in the city's asset managed plan as we move forward. And that concludes this presentation, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments?
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. You mentioned Sunflower. There was some concern about the location. Was that the location where it's currently going or where it was originally planned? I was confused about that.
Yes, we have, the commission has proposed to put it in front of the Ale House and Double Barrel Wine Bar, and in the midst of discussing this, a comment was raised about if that was an appropriate location, and an alternate location was suggested. And that's why we showed it with the sculpture photoshopped in so you could see what it would actually look like there.
But the concern was having it there in front of the ale house, but
Yes, there was some concern.
Let me, I'm the one who raised the question. And it was, if you go back to the picture, you can take a look.
No, sunflowers.
The sunflower.
Yep.
That's,
oh.
It's not clicking forward, it's only going back.
The point was, would you in that location actually be able to appreciate it? Because if you look at the pictures that we saw, it had a lot of blue sky behind it. And I looked at the location and said, well, the backdrop is the buildings, not the blue sky. Then if you're going to be looking at it down the street and we put the lights in there, will you be able to see it? And then if you're actually underneath it in that location, would you be able to see it? So those are all of the questions. So I then asked, could we at least see a Photoshop of it in place to see if it looked reasonable? Okay. That was the origin.
Oh, okay. I thought it was more
No, and so I said, maybe if you're looking for blue sky or something, it could fit better at by the flagpole or by Lucy Fountain or something. So I just asked that to be thought through. And then the other thing, real quick, when I was meeting with LDI last week or so, it wasn't clear that the Ale House actually said yes to that, but I guess they have at this point by now.
Yes, actually, I had met with Ron Witherspoon, and I believe that Brooke Witherspoon wasn't aware that I had met with Ron, and so.
So the question is, see, if you go back to that, you see it with the blue sky. Now you see it there, you don't really see it, I mean, as much. So that was my only question. Is that really the right place? I think it's going to be okay, but.
Thank you. Questions?
Okay,
Questions at this point?
No question. Do we have?
We've got some speakers.
Okay, so I'll reserve my.
Questions? Yes.
Are they all going to be lighted?
Yes,
Is
all
it for lighting?
all
Yeah,
be that.
I like the way they placed in the median for. I always think of the vandalism. I hate to mention the V word, but it's always the top part of what I consider when I see this. I grew up in a household full of artists in Piedmont, of all places, and both my parents were artists, and my mom was a sculptor. So I know that was always one of her biggest concerns when she got a chance to put one out there. So.
And the funding for this is not from the general fund, it's from the art fee, is that correct?
Correct. The art fee will pay for the purchase of the sculptures, installation, and the general fund will pay for ongoing maintenance in future years.
But this is one of this is the 30% developer fee that we have on new development.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I got a real question. Another one is, being a sailor and windsurfer, what's the maximum gust these things can handle?
Do you know what? I do not have that information at my fingertips, but I can find out.
Oh, because we've got potential for some real winds here.
That's true.
70, 80 miles an hour, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That's right. Turn it into a turbine, yeah. Right. Okay, I do have any other questions at this point? Okay, I do have 3 speaker cards, Jim Schmidt, John Stein, and Rochelle Snedecor. Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening, Mayor Marchant and council persons. I'm Jim Schmidt, 572 Railway in Livermore. I'd like to urge the City Council to approve the installation of the 4 sculptures. I've seen the pictures and now the pictures tonight, and I think they'll certainly make an interesting downtown even better. 2 general comments. First, it may seem simple to the public to select and put up sculpture, but from my experience on the Arts Commission, it's not that simple. It requires a fair process for competing artists and a whole process that covers everything from general ideas all the way to the provisions for future maintenance. And second, I wanted to inform any of the public or the people here that the general city funds are not used except for some maintenance costs. Public art is financed by a very modest fee on construction. The accepted theory is that building often takes away open space, often has other negative impacts like increased traffic. Providing public art is compensation for the downside of building. I congratulate the Arts Commission in particular for this milestone project. Thank you.
And Mr. Schmidt, there's an opera coming up, isn't there? Marriage of Figaro.
Yes, and we will have beautiful art in the opera. Artful costumes, artful stage. It opens a week from Saturday.
March 11th, right?
Yes.
Okay, Marriage of Figaro at the Bankhead Theater.
Thank you.
No point of order on that, sorry. John Stein and Rochelle Snedecor. Mr. Stein.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. I like the sculptures. They're all interesting. Some look higher maintenance than others, but my major question is, will any trees be removed to make space for these sculptures? I would hope not. Thank you.
Thank you. And no tuning forks, right? Are any trees going to be removed from these?
No.
Okay. Yeah, the original landscaping with the pictures in the staff report showed that it was mostly just very low landscaping. Okay, great. Thank you.
It's
Rochelle
me again,
Snedecor.
Rochelle Snedecor. Just wanted to say we're so excited, obviously, new enhancements in downtown. What we love about these art projects, especially, even the ones that are revolving, is it's another reason to come down if you haven't been down for a while. So our commitment to you, instead of waiting how you're going to promote this, is we really want to be a major part in helping you put together your mapping so that we can get some real creative, links onto our websites, your website, showing people how to come down and see these, some of the bio information that we can get from you on the artists themselves, anything that we can get so that we can have this as part of our app, and things to help the stroll as people are coming downtown. And with that being said, we would love to, I don't know if it's too late to get really good substantial information, but all of the electrical boxes that have been done in the past, we really should be promoting that and celebrating that as part of our strolls in downtown as well. So I guess what I'd like to say now is we're ready to help you launch art mapping in the downtown area so that these things are, for our visitors especially too, but even our residents know there's another reason to take a walk. All these things to see, and we'll have the information there to help celebrate it. Yeah, we just said we do more work.
Great, thank you. So question, is there with this art mapping and we're creating this neat little art walk downtown, I know the QR codes were really popular for a while there. Are those still being used? Are those still as popular as they had been? You could have the information right there on the base of the sculpture and people could get the information on it?
I'm not sure how popular they are these days, but we are considering doing that. We have a council.
Rochelle's got this bursting here. Okay. I'm a dinosaur, but I do it well.
Our
Stick
new
with
app
something
that
I'm
we're
good at.
working on goes by Beacon. Does anyone know what the Beacon is? That's basically Big Brother knows where you are, what you're standing next to, and your information is right there.
Oh.
So we're going to be doing that with our businesses as well, history, and that's how we'll eventually. Don't think this is happening tomorrow. It's going to be not as long as its city would do, but it will be taking. Just teasing. But yeah, we'll do it by Beacon technology. So when you're walking up, it knows that you're there, and it will immediately go to that art piece.
Gotta love technology. Great. Thank you very much for the. Thanks for filling us in on that.
And one more suggestion for the art mapping. As someone who's working on an art mapping project for another city, you can create story maps that are art mapping that are just people can browse online and just see all of the artwork, and it's relatively, something that's easier to do with some of the new GIS technology. So, are we providing direction? I see Jason starting to. Okay. All right.
So I think this is very exciting, and I know this has been something that the Art Commission has worked on for a long, long time. And Kathy saying 2 years, but thank you so much for your stick-to-itiveness, for your persistence on this. This was the vision behind the public art fee, and I was on the Art Commission when we first started talking about the art fee, and that this is so that art could be passively enjoyed throughout the community. I think this is one of the things that's very exciting about the Shea Sage project is they have an art walk at that development, so it's that art could be enjoyed throughout the community and in the neighborhoods so that everybody can participate in art, that it is truly a community event. So I think I love this. This is great.
So I'll move we install this.
Okay.
These sculptures.
We have a motion.
I'll second also with a comment that I wanted to thank the Arts Commission for all their hard work. I understand what goes into it. And also I wanted to thank the Art Commission models for the pictures, for standing there. And we have one in the audience this evening, but I saw 2 other models at least, trying to at least somewhat represent what that looks like. So thank you.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Any additional comments? Great.
Yeah, I'll just say it's great.
I love it. It's great.
And I really appreciate, making it us able to visualize it and this process. I mean, I think we hadn't done so well maybe in some other opportunities, but I think this is the way you've done this is a model for how we go forward.
Great. Well, in that case, I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? It passed unanimously. Thank you very much. What a great job. Thank you. So with that, we're moving on to the Livermore Tar Plant. Deanandra Bacigalupi. Yes. We have Steve Stewart and Andy Ross.
Don't you want to get that?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to you and the members of the City Council. We're here because in October 2016, the council directed staff to prepare a report on establishing the Livermore Tar Plant as the city's official flower. In summer of 2014, Heath Bartosh, on behalf of the California Native Plant Society, submitted an application to the California Fish and Wildlife Commission to list the tar plant as an endangered species. In summer 2016, the commission listed the tar plant as an endangered species under the California Endangered Species Act. The Livermore tar plant, shown here, is a small plant in the sunflower family that grows to 10 to 40 centimeters and produces small yellow flowers. The Livermore tar plant is only known to occur in the northern and eastern portions of Livermore, in alkali meadows and grasslands. The largest concentration of the Livermore tar plant is found on the eastern portion of the city-owned property known as the Springtown Preserve, shown here. The preserve is approximately 300 acres located in the southern portion of a broader hydrologic and ecologic complex known as the Springtown Alkali Sink. The sink is located on the northeast side of the Livermore Valley, and lies generally between the urban development within the city to the south and Brushy Peak and Ridgelands to the north. And just to reemphasize, the concentration of Livermore tar plant is located in this area. As you're aware, the preserve experiences some damage from trespass and adverse activities such as motorized off-road vehicle use, off-leash dog use, excavation activities, and illegal dumping. Staff has been convening a working group to address damage caused by these uses and discuss near-term protection and long-term restoration and management measures. The working group has made the installation of fencing and signage and removal of invasive weeds a high priority. Longer term, identifying funding sources for scientific study, maintenance, monitoring, and management are also very important. Staff is currently preparing an agreement with the Contra Costa County developer to fund near-term activities, and we'll come back to the council for final authorization of that soon. And in 2014, the council directed staff to investigate establishing a mitigation bank at the preserve, which would achieve long-term conservation goals by establishing a conservation easement on the property, developing and implementing a management plan, and securing maintenance funding through an endowment. Bank establishment is still ongoing, and staff has received direction from the regulatory agencies to conduct further study and modify the banking scope. Staff is also investigating potential turnkey sales similar to the Dueling Canyon Brewing owl mitigation authorized by the council in 2014 to achieve the same long-term conservation goals. And moving back to the flower, the city librarian had conducted some research and confirmed that the city does not currently have an official flower, although it should be noted that in 1938 there was a campaign to make Livermore the Petunia City. This was initiated by the Livermore Pleasanton Garden Club with the Livermore Chamber of Commerce in preparation for the Golden Gate International Exposition of 1939. Since the city does not currently have an official flower, and because of Livermore Tar Plant's unique location and special status, staff recommends the City Council adopt a resolution establishing it as the official city flower. That concludes our presentation, and we're available for any questions.
Question for staff?
Why is it called a tar plant? Do you know? Does it have anything to do with tar? I mean, I'm just.
Smells like turpentine?
What?
Yeah, the plant is actually sticky, and it does have a sort of a tar or asphalt smell to it. I would just add to that Heath Bartosh is in the audience too, and if he can answer any kind of scientific questions you might have as well.
So I was thinking it's just much more macho than a petunia.
Is that what we're looking for?
And some of the folks that are working on this are members of the Jepson Herbarium at UC Berkeley. And just for the record, it was named after Remo Bacigalupi, who was the first curator of the Jepson Herbarium. He recognized that it was misclassified in 1966, and they actually classified it again in 1999, and they chose to name it after him since he was the one that first recognized that. Facts you learn nowhere else. So, all right. So
if I could, I just wanted to recognize Ranger Patty Cole of LARPD for introducing us to this tar plant. She does extensive work north of Springtown, past the Bluebell, and has shown me where they grow in relative harmony with everything else around it. So, yeah, it's a great idea. It's all ours. It ain't anywhere else. So it's great for us to consider this today.
It's as rare and unique as Livermore.
It is pretty much, yeah.
Okay, I do have several cards on this. Mary Ann Hannon, Connie Copps, and Regina Brinker. And Jason Bezos, you're in here too. Ms. Hannon.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and City Council people. I'm Mary Ann Hannon. I'm a coordinator of a small group called Friends of Springtown Preserve. We certainly want to urge you to pass this resolution to establish the Livermore Tar Plant as Livermore's official flower. Friends of Springtown has actually been advocating for the protection of the alkali sink habitat for about 10 years. I mean, some of us have come to you over the years and advocated for its protection. And we've been working with the Livermore Springtown Working Group toward that end of its protection and taking advantage of opportunities to educate the community about the habitat that to many seems like a real wasteland, but it's really a very special habitat and one that's diminishing over the state at a great rate. In fact, it was more extensive until the county approved the development on Springtown in the in the Springtown area. So it's been minimized even in Livermore. I'd like to especially thank Stephen Spadowski, Councilman Spadowski, for responding to our suggestion that this be considered by you guys as the official flower. And I also like to especially thank Steve Stewart and Andy Ross for the great background presentation and for the report that you've made to have this considered. And to Heath for doing the research and submitting the petition to the state to have it labeled as an endangered species. And to Regina Brinker, who's another member of our group, for having the idea to have this vote taken during your Science and Engineering Month, which, the city has participated in. So, the city has celebrated this element that has been named in its honor, Livermorium, that lasts for 6 seconds in a lab situation. And I hope we can celebrate a plant so unique to Livermore that has survived and bloomed in the harsh conditions of the alkali sink for a lot longer than 6 milliseconds. So please adopt the tar plant as our official flower. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hannon. And you're right, it's 62 milliseconds. Connie Copps, Regina Brinker, and Jason Bezos. Ms. Copps.
Okay, so I'm looking at this flower, and I've heard a little bit about it, but I really want you to delve deeper into this report. The credentials on the botanist, do some background research, and make sure that it's backed up by facts, because unfortunately, I don't want to be accusatory, but there's been a lot of things that have happened in Springtown that were maybe borderline not transparent. And I think that it's really important to the residents of Springtown to bring facts into the forefront. I really think that there's a lot in this report that needs to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb. I'd like to see a copy of the state report from Fish and Game, because I've contacted Fish and Game on other things regarding Springtown. They have not been responsive or receptive. Also, there's been signs in Springtown all over that area that Zone 7, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Department of Fish and Game, together with the City of Livermore, have already tagged some of that area. Now, because of other things that have happened in Springtown and other things that have happened in Livermore, to some degree, I really, 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 really want you to go back and make sure, especially because, the park's dealing with another aspect of this area. They should be intertwined. I'm asking you to hold off on accepting this report, because I think if you name the flower, you're going to respect the report as a whole. I want you to go over that report and fact check it and see if you can't get to the parks and intertwine these issues. Perhaps if they're working on a park nearby, perhaps they could intertwine it. But there has been a lot of dishonesty, a lot of things that cannot be backed up, a lot of legitimate questions that will not get answered for whatever reason, I don't know. But I think that because this area as a whole just got some housing dumped on it in an area where maybe that flower was, let's look at this, let's really engage the community, not just on the facilities that you own, but all the public, any of the public entities surrounding Springtown, because most of it is public entities that back up to, the old golf course and that. And we really need to look at this for what it is, not what some people want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Regina Brinker, Jason Bezos.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, City Council, staff members. My name is Regina Brinker, speaking as a resident of Livermore, 598 Stetson Way. Thank you for considering the selection of Livermore tar plant as the city's official flower. Livermore is the only place in the world that this flower blooms, and that is a very unique statement. Thank you, Mr. Ross, for your detailed background information and presentation, and for the picture of the flower. This blooms only in the harshest, in the hot days of August. So I think a lot of people here probably have never seen this flower, but it is unique, so thank you for that. This flower grows in alkaline soil common to North Livermore, and that soil is found only in 2 other places, a similar soil profile in the world. And scientists have been studying this area for years, have gone back and done soil profiles to find out if this plant is that unique. The soil has first been looked at and examined, and then Mr. Bartosh, who is a field biologist with the California Native Plant Society and a well-respected scientist in his field, has combed through areas with similar soils and found no evidence of this plant in other areas. So there have been many reports over the past 10 years in support of the uniqueness of this plant. As a science teacher, being able to have students study Livermore's unique ecosystem brings real-world personal context to lessons. Students who were able to participate in one of the initial plant census, and there were several counts of the plant, they are very proud of their work, and they join me in encouraging you to adopt the Livermore tar plant as the city's official flower, adding another reason to celebrate science and celebrate Livermore. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Bezos.
Hi, good evening. I'm opposed to the designation of an official city flower at this time. I think we need to take a little time to smell and study the flowers of the Livermore Valley. We need a little more due diligence on other flora that might be unique to the Livermore Valley. I think also this is a concern of opening Pandora's box of having an official city flower. Next, it might be an official city tree, official city mineral, official city fossil, official city bird, official city animal, official city fish, vertebrate, fungus, on and on, as we do at the state level. And at some point, politicians have other work to do, and then it gets ramped up where you get a lot of drawings by school children saying you got to adopt this, this snail needs to be adopted, et cetera. So I'm just saying a Pandora's box be open. And then as for the Livermore tarweed, relatively recently identified, but what if a better local flower is identified 5, 10, or 50 years from now? And as for birdspeak, which I didn't see any mention in the report, that's one of the problems I had with the report, was it did not compare to other options that might be available to the city. Birdspeak, I believe, is a plant that grows there. I first became aware of that back in 1990 when I was an editor at the school newspaper, Lel Vaquerito at Livermore High School, and I had a Springtown classmate that really wanted an article in the newspaper about birdspeak. I'd never heard of birdspeak before, and that's how I learned about it, how it was the unique alkaline soil conditions there. But again, I don't know what else is out there too. What other options? So I do think there needs to be a look at other endangered, threatened plants of the Livermore Valley. I'm thinking of Marilyn Russell, that great field biology teacher at Livermore High School, who educated so many of us on local flora. And also, Livermore, we had a lot of commercial plants. I'd never heard the petunias, but the roses, the great roses of Jackson and Perkins, around where the fire station is now located, around where Jackson Avenue Elementary School is located, that area, I think all the way up in the 50s and 60s. I mean, the question would be, were there any rose breeds that Jackson and Perkins and others created here? And it's little known that Luther Burbank, of the great fame of Santa Rosa, he also had locations along what's now Wente Street here in Livermore, about a century ago where he was growing unique cultivars of plants. I don't know if any included flowers. So again, I don't want to throw cold water on this, but I do think the city's existed since 1876 for 141 years without a city flower, and that it would be nice if we took a little broader look at all the other flora. And I'm especially interested. This one is a good candidate because it apparently is located only here in the Livermore Valley, but I have no idea if there are other flowers that also, and ones that haven't been discovered yet. But I mean, this is good recognition, and the native plant scientists are doing good work, but I do think there should be a broader look, and I did not see that in this report, of other options of flowers. There need some other semi-finalists before you come to a finalist. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bezos. That's the last of the comment cards that I have. Comments from the council?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mary Ann Hannon and Regina Brinker. It's nice to see you in person. Sorry we didn't meet earlier. For working on this and putting all the dedicating and all the hard work, and also Mr. Bartosh as well. I think he's in the audience. You want to wave? Yes, and our two young members of the audience tonight that stuck it out. Thank you very much. I think that this is just, you know, when it was brought to my attention, it just, every now and then you get to do something unique and fun and interesting and something that's pertinent to the city, and it just made sense. maybe we can fit a little flower in the cowboy's hand there on our symbol, or something, and maybe correct the feet of the cowboy at the same time, the horse, because that was pointed out to me by somebody that is incorrect. But anyway, no, I just thank you for all of your hard work, and I think it's a wonderful fit for Livermore. As I stated when I pitched this to the council, it's a great name, probably a great smell, and a great looking flower, and it's just unique, as in Livermore is also a very unique place. So I was gonna make a joke that I picked some flowers tonight to hand out to people, but yeah, it's an endangered plant, so I didn't go there. I was even thinking about buying little yellow flowers just to freak people out, but no. I just think it's just a neat item. So thank you very much for working on it.
Is it possible to cultivate these things? I mean, I realize they're endangered, so you're not supposed to go near them. But is there some way to increase its chances?
I think Mr. Bartosh would be the best to answer that. I mean, with the unique soils, groundwater, all the unique natural attributes that enable this plant to grow out there, you'd be hard pressed to duplicate that in a lab or no offense to the scientists in the room.
Just trying to find if there's a way to improve its chances of long-term survival, because it is in a pretty precarious place.
Yeah, I'm removing invasive and noxious weeds is one way to help the plant survive. Yeah, and then the other near-term measures we've identified, or the working groups identified, and also the long-term measures are a way to help, provide the best chance for this plant and the other federally endangered plant species, that is, of palmate bract bird's-beak, which is actually also found in like 8 other places on the planet, so it's not unique to Livermore. Gives them the best shot at avoiding extinction. And I do know of a biologist who tried to do that with a red-legged frog by moving it to an area that he thought would offer a better chance to survive, and you can get into.
But that was in Death Valley.
Yeah, you don't want to do that at all. Don't. Yeah.
No, I think we have the opportunity to, it's something to really be proud of. It only occurs here, and by recognizing it as our city flower, it may actually bring more attention to trying to preserve it, trying to save it. I'm very familiar with that alkali sink, which now looks like they should be renting kayaks out there. But it's I see them every summer on the warm days when I decide I don't really care much about shade. You can find them blooming out there in the warmest late afternoons, and nowhere else. You can't go into Dublin and find them. You can't go anywhere else and find them here. So it's this is a chance to perhaps preserve it by recognizing it as our city flower.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make the motion to adopt the resolution establishing the Livermore tar plant as the official Livermore flower.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Coomber? Yes, okay. Moved by Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Passed unanimously. We have an official Livermore flower. Very good. Thank you.
And Mayor, can I make one quick request? Could we get the resolution, copies of the resolution to Ms. Hannon Brinker and Mr. Bartosh, similarly presented as we do with proclamations?
I think that's certainly, yeah, absolutely. And thank you for leading the charge on this. Okay, on to 6.04, which is downtown lighting. Downtown lighting evaluation. Kevin Duffus. And Sherry Sheets, our city engineer. Thank you very much, one and all. Thanks, guys, for coming in and staying late. Appreciate it. Thank you. Kevin Duffus and Sherry Sheets.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand and members of the City Council. Back in September 26, 2016, the City Council directed staff to identify measures to improve lighting in the downtown. This issue had been brought forward as a recommendation from the downtown parking study. That study noted that parking on 2nd and 3rd Street was less desirable than parking on 1st Street due to the lower light levels in those areas. Livermore Downtown Inc. and various business owners had also brought this issue to the council as a way to enhance the ambiance of side streets like J and K. In particular, the City Council wanted to enhance pedestrian comfort and to improve the ambiance of various downtown locations. The downtown has approximately 350 streetlights in the downtown specific plan area and 25 sets of twinkle lights just located right along 1st Street. Last December, staff prepared a request for proposal and sent it out to about a dozen qualified consultants experienced in lighting. We received 4 proposals and met with the 4 consultant groups. The scope of services outlined in the RFP includes the following. 1, a complete inventory of the existing streetlight network. 2, to conduct a photometric analysis to determine and map the existing light levels in the downtown. 3, to propose lighting level standards based on the various uses in the downtown. 4, to propose minimum lighting levels to eliminate dark spots. 5, to optimize the existing network of lights. Livermore has a considerable investment in our existing streetlight network, so we'd like to maximize the efficiency of the existing equipment as much as we can. 6, to evaluate placemaking opportunities. Lighting can be used to create a sense of place or to highlight key features in the downtown, including new art sculptures. There are many opportunities for placemaking in the downtown. Overhead twinkle lights can be used to create a piazza-like feeling. Side streets such as J and K might benefit from a treatment like that. Pedestrian bollard lights can create safe gathering places in our plazas. 7, make recommendations for new lighting where appropriate. 8, to maximize energy cost savings and minimize maintenance costs. And 9, community engagement. The city and the consultant will work together with Livermore Downtown Inc., downtown businesses, downtown residents, and other stakeholders to review various options and to make recommendations. Additionally, we will conduct nighttime field reviews in the downtown area to demonstrate areas that are working well and areas that need attention. The study's objectives include enhancing pedestrian safety and security and exploring placemaking opportunities downtown. Prior to finalizing consultant selection, staff is seeking council direction on the scope of services being proposed. With that direction, staff anticipates selecting a consultant by mid-March and kicking off the program this spring and returning to council with recommendations in summer of 2017. That concludes my presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions?
There's a comment.
Okay. Comment?
Oh, the comment is that, when I first heard about this from LDI, it really made sense, and it builds on the lighting we've already done down there. And just listening to the report here, it's much more comprehensive than I envisioned, but it strikes me as really good. And so I appreciate what you've laid out here.
Good.
Oh. Councilor Carling?
I'm a little confused to what you're asking us to do. You've interviewed the 4 responders, right?
That's correct.
And you've got this list of things to which they responded?
That's correct.
So explain to me again what you want us.
So there is some flexibility still with the scope of services. So we talked to the consultants. All of them agreed that if we wanted to adjust the scope of services, they would certainly be willing to do that. So we're just seeking direction on the scope of services that we've laid out.
Well, do we know anything about the cost? Oh, you must know something. Oh, they're all about $75K, is that right?
No, there was a wide range. The low end was about $20,000, and it went up to the high of about $125,000. So there's a wide range presented by the 4 respondents to our RFP.
So you want us to tell you which of the 9 or 10 that we think were important? Is that?
No. So if I may, the scope of services that we've developed, we want to make sure that it included everything that you had expected to be included.
Okay.
We have the budget already identified for the project.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
So what I was trying to say is that I think that being comprehensive makes sense. So I like the way it's been expanded, actually, from just put some lights across the top of a couple of streets.
Vice Mayor Spadovsky?
So in the inventory of the existing streetlight network, I saw the categories: illumination level, light, barriers, trees, other obstacles, etc. Does the etc. include current conditions of the lighting, kind of rolling it into our asset management. If they're out there inventorying each light, can they at least assign a condition if something needs to be replaced? And has that been thought of? Or?
Absolutely. They would monitor. They would document by location and type and by condition of each of the lights.
Okay. And my other question: did you send a proposal, an RFP, to Deacon Dave?
I have to go back and take a look.
Because he does a great job, and boy, if he lit up our downtown like he lit up, we'll
take a close look at
I'm
that.
a big fan of twinkle lights, and if we didn't have the light bulb already, I'd be suggesting the twinkle light as our official city
He
light.
maximizes energy costs, though.
I see it somewhat as a personal safety issue if people are walking throughout the downtown at night and tripping, of which there's a lot when you get up on 3rd Street especially. Are you planning on taking this anywhere south of 4th, or is it going to be second, third mostly?
The limits went up to 4th Street. We weren't planning to take it beyond 4th Street.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, I have a speaker card. Rochelle Snedecor, Livermore Downtown, Inc.
She's a glutton.
That was such a great presentation. I don't really need to add anything, but I'll talk anyway. It's been awesome just to understand the importance of light in downtown. We've watched the evolution just in the last 17 years when we went from the really high street lights, because it was a highway, so they were way up, to light up for all the cars and traffic. I was there the night, as some of you were, the night we turned on the new pedestrian focus lights for the first time, and you just immediately saw our street change. Then we added the twinkle lights, and we were all down there to watch that. The first night we lit up the trees. The Christmas tree lights, when that comes on, it's just a magical thing. So it definitely is a beautification thing, but this is also going to help our parking issues. We talk about having no parking. In reality, we have a lot of walking issues. And the walking issues are stemmed from sometimes in the evening it doesn't feel safe. We have many of our workforce that are the late shift, and they are not happy with, if they can't park in the well-lit areas, they're afraid after their shifts are over. So we're excited about this. I think the night walk is going to be a really important piece, because I think we'll discover pockets that we didn't even realize didn't feel safe. So that's going to be really important. I've always said, though, I think that everyone should wear high heels when we do that, because I think we can also address the issue of some of our trip hazards out there. Which will also make women feel a lot better about walking through some of our street areas. I've threatened it for years, and no one has done that yet. So,
Don't wear spike heels with the blue stone, right? Okay, Jeff Caskey.
Thank you very much for taking my late card. Jeff Caskey, 585 South K. I'm not going to be wearing heels downtown. Thank you very much. Obviously, very much in support of what you're discussing here. I don't know if it requires additional comments or whatever, but we have a lot of lighting throughout the city that has been there for a long time. Maybe not enough that's been there, but the issues of light pollution are things that I think ought to be carefully considered here. Not that we should have less light, but that the lights should be carefully planned so that they aim down, not out and up. With the new modern LEDs, which will be more efficient in any event, there are better shapes for aiming them so that we keep the lighting down on the street where we want it. We put the energy where we want to pay to have it. And in fact, those sorts of things I think will also help when we go to expand some of this, hopefully into the other neighborhoods, so that we don't need to add more poles, but rather have more intelligently designed, well-shaped lighting. So anyway, just hoping that we're looking at that as well, and keeping a little bit of light out of bedrooms and onto the pavement will be helpful. Thanks very much.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Caskey. That's all the comment cards that I have. So I'm going to close the public comment period. And of course, we're investigating solar and LEDs as he had suggested. So, okay, very good. Additional comments from the council? I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I would move that we, pursue this scope of work.
Okay, moved by
second.
Councilmember Warner, seconded by Councilmember Carling. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? It passes unanimously. Very good. Thank you very much. We still got 10 minutes to go. So with that, let's go to, hang on a second here. Let me just Make sure we got everything. 7.01, committee reports, matters initiated. Councilmember Coomber. Any matters to be initiated or committee reports, council reports?
The matters initiated.
Meetings you've been to?
I haven't had any. I just I do want to just to mention this, to explore this, is that since we're in the business tonight of forming committees, is something to explore what our open space assets are and how could we develop them as open space areas within the city, and perhaps consider a committee of interested parties or groups, TVC and Friends of Tesla, etc., to be involved in that.
Those the open spaces within the city limits of
Yes.
Livermore? Okay.
And can I add just a comment to that? I think there was an article several weeks ago in the paper about areas that were. Was it an article or was it just an online? I can't remember. Yeah, it was, but it identified areas under threat in the Bay Area, and we had some of those. What was that? Somebody said something? Yeah, it was. That's what it was. Mr. Stein reminded me about it, but it was. I forget the title of it. But it was Greenbelt Alliance, and it was a very interesting article. So I would encourage.
Yeah, I saw that too.
It's called Endangered Spaces. That's what it was. So I'm
I think
trying
that was
to remember.
the one by Jeremy Madsen, if I remember correctly.
Right.
He served on the East Bay Parks Advisory Committee for a long.
So I would think your suggestion is very timely.
Previously, the Intergovernmental Committee had identified this particular issue of identifying common open space assets owned by one of the three agencies, the school district, the park district, or the city, as being one that they wanted to have mapped. Perhaps we could piggyback this effort on the conclusion of that, and maybe that would be a second step once that mapping is completed. Would that be acceptable to the council to get a report once that mapping is completed, and then you could provide additional direction at that time?
Okay, very good. Thank you. Councilmember Carling.
So the end of January, I attended the ABAG General Assembly in San Francisco. They're combining with MTC, Metropolitan Transit Commission, and a lot of discussion in that regard. I've had participated in 2 stopwaste.org meetings over the last few weeks. I'm on the Planning and Administration Committee as well as the Waste Management Authority for Stop Waste. So those are some committee meetings I've attended. Last meeting we didn't have this particular part of the agenda because it was so late, and I just wanted to bring up that I thought the presentations regarding the Arts Career Center that we heard from several people last time were very positive. I think that's an exciting idea that some of the folks in the community are putting together. So I look forward to hearing more about that as we move forward.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Warner.
A couple of meetings. One was with LCAC and the Arts Career Center came up there. There was another presentation, and there was general business, and then beginning a report out on the amount of space that the various art groups might need. The other one was with LDI, and we talked about the lights and the sculptures. And the request I made was for the LDI to keep coming up with good ideas for things we could do downtown that were manageable and the several that they've already had. So I think you agreed to do that, right? So they keep. So then the other thing I wanted to mention, because of all of the stuff that we've just gone through with the flooding in Livermore and San Jose, and we did in the council workshop talk a fair amount about emergency preparedness and some of the things. But frankly, the acoustics in that room weren't all that wonderful, and we don't have an official record. So one of the things that I might want to do is, if I could ask the staff in a second to just summarize quickly what our goals are that came out of that, in the sense that we were going to, I know you're working on it, but you're going to consolidate the themes, and if you could just do that, that might be helpful for for the record here, and it'll come back in an official report. But, for instance, in the emergency preparedness, we said there were 3 key elements. One was making sure that the staff was trained to handle an emergency with our current facilities. Second, we needed to look at facilities gaps that we have, especially within rooms and communications. And thirdly, to make sure the public is adequately informed and trained. I mean, for instance, in San Jose, you look at all the complaints because there wasn't a way for the community to reach out and warn them of what was happening. And we were kind of surprised by what happened in Collier Canyon, as an example. So I think with what's happening, it's extremely important that we handle this emergency preparedness. But if I could ask staff to just mention a couple of the other themes that came out real quickly from the goal workshop and how we're thinking about things.
So you gave a very good summary of disaster preparedness. Public safety was also identified, both the use of technology and essentially appropriate staffing levels, which the council will consider during ultimately its budget process on those items. Of course, you worked on another one of your goals this evening, which is downtown. And so essentially moving forward with determining what to do on the specific catalyst sites in the downtown was identified. You gave some direction, which essentially resulted in the item before you this evening on that item. Those were essentially a couple of the goals that you had. There were additional ones that were discussed as a part of the process here. Give me a hand. Okay, we had homelessness and affordable housing that were part of the overall list there. We had the asset management continuation of that process, which includes continuing on the path that the council has gotten a couple of years into, reviewing all of the assets that the community ultimately owns collectively and determining standards to move forward with their maintenance and resources necessary to maintain them at appropriate service levels. You also chose let's see, what do we have? Innovation and economic development, continuing our work that was with the creation of the new department there, and in particular, you did endorse exploring the expansion of iGate and the space that was set aside for our nonprofit partner there. So our nonprofit partner is exploring larger spaces, essentially, in order to create the space for an incubation and development area for new businesses. And then, of course, long-term financial stability continued to be on the council's list, not only as a goal, but essentially, as several council members noted, a way of life or an approach to things, so that we make sure that we leave the city in a very good shape to carry on its fundamental tasks.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
Since we didn't report out last time, I do have a few items. On January 26th, I attended the East Bay League of California Cities meeting. We had a state legislator panel that addressed a variety of topics. It was almost like a mini town hall meeting with different state legislators, so that was very interesting. On the 30th of January and the 15th of this month, I attended the East Bay Clean Energy inaugural board meeting on the 30th. Lots of work. We're meeting twice per month. Sound familiar? And one of the major action items is that we are extending an invitation to Contra Costa County and the cities that aren't part of a community choice energy program. So they have the option of joining East Bay Clean Energy or starting up their own. On the 6th of this month, the LAVTA board meeting, we had a board presentation, very interesting, regarding autonomous vehicles. That was one of the projects that LAVTA will be part of a pilot program to do that last mile connection between the bus and where you're going, and possibly even short trips between BART. That autonomous vehicle demonstration project will take place in Dublin. On the 9th, we had our Planning Commission interviews, and I wanted to take a moment to thank all of the applicants. We had some really outstanding applicants for the Planning Commission. It's just, it's a shame we didn't have more seats, but we had a lot of qualified people, so I wanted to thank them for applying. On the 16th, I attended the Livermore School District Science Odyssey. And I want to give a very special congratulations to Haley Spadowski for her first ever entry and blue ribbon winning entry, by the way. Made her mother and father very, very proud. So that was a nice experience. And then on the 27th, today, we had the Lab to Projects and Services Subcommittee. Our on-time performance is increasing, and our ridership numbers are slightly increasing after the recent realignment. They did take a dip, we expected it, but they're starting to inch back up. Under matters initiated, well, first I wanted to thank staff for their response with the flooding and all of their work, particularly the social media outreach. I think Donna's still here. Warning people, hey, the signs that we place when a trail is down, do not cross those signs and keep walking on a trail that's quickly eroding. It was also disturbing on Facebook. Somebody posted a picture of 4 boys getting into a canoe and going down one of the that is a good way to die quick. So, people need to not enter, rushing water, any moving or standing water. So I think we did a good job in getting that message out. I also wanted to give a special thanks to the fire marshal that attended the Baker Glazer Town Hall meeting. I showed up 15 minutes early. I couldn't find a parking spot. As you know, it was in the paper, over 300 people. I think that's a conservative estimate showed up. She did a great job really controlling the crowd and keeping things in order. So I just wanted to thank her for that. One item that I want to bring up, potential outreach to RPD over the Sunset Oak Tree. It's a very unfortunate situation, and should things take a turn for the worse and the Sunset Oak Tree need to be removed, it would be nice to see if it can be removed in a manner where we can reuse as much of the wood from the tree as possible. I don't know if with our arts committee, if we have any contacts of artists that could use the wood, we could turn them into artwork, or some kind of reclamation process to honor the tree. Should the worst case scenario come down. And then the other item I'd like to bring up, and Mr. Stein has brought this up many times. I think he brought it up immediately after the last election, but I do think we need to review our election code. With discussions with our city attorney, I think there are some housekeeping items that we need to conduct with the election code, but I specifically think we need to look at the campaign funding limits. What are the ramifications behind raising? What do other cities, maybe a comparison of local cities as to what their limits are? Because I think that it would be nice for candidates to be able to raise money to be more effective in their campaigns. And right now, I think that that's hindered by our current campaign contribution limits. So I don't know if the rest of the council would agree to that, just exploring that.
I think it's worth looking at, sure.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, and just echoing Councilmember Warner's comments about, I've been involved in the activation of a number of emergency operations centers, and it is absolutely critical to have appropriate training, appropriate facilities with modern technology to leverage the staff. So that's very important. With regards to the oak tree, when the telephone pole was replaced, the flagpole was replaced, there were a number of artists that did work from the wood from the flagpole. In fact, I've got a pen that was made from the flagpole.
I have a pen as well.
Yes. And but when the oak tree at Alden Lane collapsed, that was another one where they used a lot of the oak, the wood for that. We've made gavels out of some of the heritage oaks here, as well as a lot of other artwork. So certainly Alden Lane is a great place where they bring in the artists to do that work. February 12th, we had someone commented about it last time we were here, but we had the Rally for Love downtown at the Shea Plaza in front of the Bankhead Theater. Over 500 people were there, and it was amazing. People were very passionate and very concerned, but it was just a wonderful event. Everybody just came together as a community and re-energized their focus on community service and outreach and working toward making it a better community. And so that was very exciting. The 13th, I was at the Alameda County Transportation Commission, the 580 Express Lane Committee. We're averaging over 30,000 daily trips on the express lanes. There were over 6.8 million trips since it opened last February. It's been open for a year. The maximum toll has been $7.50. The average toll comes in at about $1.45, reducing, or the eastbound traffic has as much as a 23-mile-per-hour differential. So these things absolutely work, and it's brought in $7.4 million in revenue in that year, and all those revenue dollars stay in this transportation corridor. So it's working. The Planning and Policy Ledge Committee, AB 17, which is being sponsored by Holden, was part of the consideration for the 2017 legislative program. We support the increasing of funding for transportation, as well as innovative, flexible programs that address the needs of commuters, youth, seniors, people with disabilities, and low income. So we, again, recommended a support position on that. SB 3, Affordable Housing Bond, and also includes TOD, Transit-Oriented Development, Senior and Infill Housing. And we also discussed both at this and at the ACTC meeting of February 23rd, the RM3, the Regional Movement Plan. We recognize that the 580 corridor brings in about 32% of the area's bridge revenue. So we've got a lot of input on the RM3 dollars. And as Steve Heminger of the MTC pointed out, just the ACTC proposals could take all of the proposed funding from RM3. So it's going to be a competition for that. And of course, February 22nd, I was also at the town hall. And again, so proud of the folks in Livermore. There were close to 400 people there, people that were very passionate about a lot of these issues, about a lot of federal issues, and the collaboration and the work together that we have with Assemblymember Baker and Senator Glazer from both sides of political parties. It was really something that was remarkable to see that the community, even though they were very passionate and in many cases angry, they conducted themselves very, very well. And it was really was a very remarkable evening, very remarkable effort.
Need to find a bigger venue next time. It's
Well,
going to be kind of difficult.
Working on that, yeah, working on better venues. But it was what came of that is that we came to understand that potholes and pipe breaks are neither Republican nor Democrat. They represent problems that need to be solved, and they're best solved together. So with that, we'll adjourn to the next meeting, which is March 13th, 7 o'clock. We'll see you here. Thank you.